right. Good evening, everybody. We just returned from closed session. We have nothing to report. No action was taken. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We're back in open session. Welcome, everyone. Our first item on our agenda is our district superintendent's report, so I'm going to leave it up to Dr. Hanson.
Thank you, Madam President. Just two quick things, board and for the visitors. I'd like to report on last week was an exciting week for RUSD. Our very own Dr. Jackie Perez represented RUSD on a panel at the Ed Trust West Equity Forum on September the 19th, which was last Thursday in Sacramento, California. And she shared the equity journey here in RUSD. We started with our task force last year and highlighting the processes and the actions that we've taken to ensure access and opportunity for all students. And from what I'm told from those who attended the conference, a lot of positive feedback on our strategy and work that we're doing. And so kudos to the board for calling for that task force as we continue to walk down this path that's being looked closely by the state. And then the other second thing from last week is we had California Legislative Staff Education Institute live with us literally from Wednesday through Friday. They visited RUSD. These are staffers of elected in Sacramento. No electeds come, it's just the staffers who write the policy and do the work, and some staffers have been doing this for 30 plus years in Sacramento. And you had important senators' names you heard, assembly, women and men, as well as the staffer for the Speaker of the Assembly and things such as that. But they did a debriefing at the county office on Friday. And I had a chance to be with our Chief Academic Officer, Mrs. Carmen Day. Dr. White could not be there, so Paul Jessup was in her stead. But just a whole page of comments about RUSD and their visit, because when they're here, they met with parents, they met with workforce, they met with our unions, leadership, they met with the cabinet, they met with teachers, they visited classrooms, they literally looked, turned over every stone if they could for their 3 days. But here's some things they said on their way out. Multiple times we heard them say that the district culture promotes innovation and individuals in this district can take risks. They're very impressed with personalized learning and the work that we're doing here. You've heard them say in regards to campus climate and campus safety multiple times, positive campus culture on our schools. One lady who's been doing this for 30 years, they went to Chapman and she said, best site visit I've ever had, and she'd visit hundreds of school sites, the work that she saw at Chapman. Healthy labor union relations, along with respectful inclusivity, and people feel heard in this district. Positive comments from the community. Probably my all-time favorite comment from the Sacramento, and the closing comment, he said, you know, I don't have any other way to describe this, but there's such a lack of dysfunctionality here in this district. They live in dysfunctionality in a lot of districts they see, but they said this is a very well-run system and organization. Grateful for our president, Patricia Lockdawson, stopping by, I believe it was on Thursday or maybe Friday, just to greet them and recognize them. But it felt good to have them here, and when they left, they all left with a different paradigm shift, if you will, about Riverside Unified, about the city of Riverside, and the great work that we're doing here. So 2 wins last week, of course, the Equity Conference, and then with us hosting the California Legislative Staff Education Institute. And just wanted you to know that, and that concludes my report for this evening.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Hanson. You will have to let me know if you cannot hear me, because I cannot hear from the mic. So if this is not coming through, let me know, please. Next up, we have our board members' comments, and I'm going to start with Mrs. Alvey. On the other side of the room, I'll just work our way around. Mrs. Alvey?
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Sosa. I didn't see you over there. I'm sorry, Ms. Alvey. Can I start with Mr. Sosa?
Yeah,
Thank you. I don't know if this mic is picking up. I can't
Yes, it is.
necessarily tell. Okay, thank you. I want to take this opportunity to speak about a trip that I was able to go on 2 Fridays ago, on the 7th. I was able to join the board on a trip to visit 6 high schools and look at their CTE programs. I saw some fantastic programs, the things that our district is doing to prepare students for the workforce, because the reality is for many students, college is not the next step, it's going into the workforce. And so I think what we're doing here in this district to promote that is really fantastic. At Ramona, it's the first school we visited, we saw their healthcare program. They had a TV tabletop that they used to mock up autopsies. I think that's fantastic what we can kind of use technology to help students kind of grow in that field. We saw their digital film program, teaching students kind of the creative process of turning ideas into a finished product. At Arlington, they had a Project Lead the Way program. They took Project Lead the Way's curriculum for the biomedical studies. And I think Project Lead the Way is fantastic in introducing students to careers in that field, and what we saw there really demonstrated that. At King as well, we also saw Project Lead the Way. It was more developed than Arlington, but that's simply because it's been around for longer. In this case, it was with the engineering program, and as a student at King, I can say the engineering program really is a force on our campus. 6 classes, students are able to get college credit for the work that they do, and so I think that in particular really is fantastic. At North, one of the things I saw that I thought was, there we go, something I saw that I particularly liked was their law enforcement program. The woman there who was doing instructing really did a fantastic job at preparing these young people to enter careers in law enforcement. The internships that she was allowing them to pursue, the work that she was doing to help set them up for their eventual careers really was amazing. At Lincoln, we saw healthcare and auto tech classes. This school in particular, it was a great opportunity to see students working with their English learning peers to kind of help them learn these very valuable career skills. And then finally at Poly, something I was particularly impressed with was their music program. I saw a lot of kids with outstanding music talents that were able to express that in the classroom, and hopefully they are able to use that to further their career in that field. Really, what I saw this past, not this past Friday, but 2 Fridays ago on the 7th, was our district is just full of these educators who are helping kids not only learn to enter college, but also to enter the workforce. And I think doing both of those within our district is really fantastic, and I applaud our CTE program for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Sosa. We were very happy to have you join us. Mrs. Alvey.
Thank you. I really appreciated your comments. I enjoyed it too. It was a great day. Just a couple of things. I still would like to get a schedule of all the Danielson trainings, and I would like to go to one if I can. So if you could provide me with that, that would be terrific. I wanted to thank Mr. Hunt for his kind remarks at the Citizens University Committee dinner the other night. Very nice. And today, Dr. Farouk and I had I guess several of you were also at the Historic Black Colleges Day, and we must have been passing in the morning, but really was impressed by that. That was the first time I'd been able to attend, and I was very enthused about what I saw. The kids engaged, and very, very positive day. So it really was a highlight for our district, I think. So thank you.
So, first of all, I tagged around with Daniel, so everything he said, and I thought it was an excellent CTE review. I would like, and I'm impressed with the staff with limited resources it's done. I would like to see in the future as we move forward, Dr. Farouk and I talked about this, have an interest in us setting up a relationship with organized labor, particularly with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Still a field where there's wanting out there among construction. There's always going to be that with utilities and everything. And I know that Jim Rush is interested, expressed that to both Dr. Farouk and I. I'd like to see a little more on game design and in sustainable energy and in indoor farming, hydroponics, et cetera, and so forth. I do have a picture for you, Daniel. He was arrested and hooked up, and that was good. But I was impressed how much that police review, how exacting she was with these young people. How they didn't do something exactly right. She stopped and made them go back. and how respectful those young people were of that future career. I've talked to a few of them. One of them wasn't even going to go into law enforcement. She just wanted that training and wanted that sort of discipline that came with it, which she shared. Mrs. Albee is kind in saying that, but the Citizens University Committee, which was the founding group that convinced the California legislature that the Citrus Experimental Station should go in Riverside and not Bakersfield, it's now known as UCR, was headed by school board member John Gabbard, and they were honoring this year Kathy Alvey for her contributions to our community in the arts and education, and it was fun to go with. And I do want to say, because Mr. Lee isn't here, when we get to item 2, I think it is about the grant education facility, whatever we're going to call it, that the staff did an excellent job bringing to the committee some different ideas, and everyone, including Dr. Hanson, was there to participate in it. And I think what we come out with proposing to you today is a solid, well thought out plan. The one that was rejected, because we always tell you, would have not done these two, our current district boardroom and grant. They would have done them at different times, allowing us a place to meet that had some ambiance. We didn't really care about that board. I know we're willing to meet at high schools and here, and any place we have enough for the public to. So I commend the staff. I think you'll be pleased. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Dr. Farouk, do you have anything? Oh, you have to.
Yes, thank you. I want to echo the comments expressed by Mr. Sosa, and the students had a really fun time also arresting Trustee Lee and myself. Take it very seriously, so that was interesting. Regarding the UCAN, the historically black colleges recruitment, I just want to make one comment about that. I think it'd be really great if the freshmen could actually, just for 5 minutes, just have a chance to just walk around and just witness that and get just to be aware that these kinds of things even exist. I'm sure all of us, when we were growing up, the idea of going to a place where you could get college admissions on spot and scholarships, it's just something. You wouldn't even know is possible. And so I just think them being aware of that, it might make them even more enthusiastic when they're pursuing going through high school. And I just wanted to echo the sentiments regarding Trustee Alavi's recognition. It was wonderful to attend that, and congratulations. The honor was well deserved. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Farouk. I have just a couple things. One, what I love about our career technical education, I have to give a mad shout out to our team back there, Ron Weston and Donna Schulte. I can't see who else is back there, but fantastic. There you are, Ron. Fantastic. They did a great job pulling it together, and everybody who helped put that on, because it was an enormous undertaking getting the 5 of us on a bus around town, so I gotta say. But the cool thing about that I thought was neat, and you sort of alluded to this, Mr. Sosa, was career technical ed isn't a tracking thing anymore. And I know our team has worked very hard. Oh, I saw Mr. Harvey to make sure our CTE classes are also A through G approved, so kids can make the decision. We don't make it for them, which I think is fantastic. So thank you for that. Loved the Historically Black College UCAN event this morning. I have to admit, I get a little emotional when I'm there. It made me feel a little bit weepy. I felt very hopeful and inspired for our future, seeing everybody there. It was really, really cool. I was asked to participate. CSBA is doing a mental health program at the annual education conference in December, and they're looking at programs throughout the state. So they have engaged a consultant for this, who reached out to me, and I had an interview with her, and I also put her in touch with Mr. Walker about some of our programs, and she had a series of questions to ask me about, and as I was telling her all the things we had going at RUSD, she kept getting increasingly more dumbfounded about the mental health supports that we have in place here, and how she's talked to school districts across the state and the country. She's based out of DC, and she's really never heard anything like it. So kudos to everybody that's made all of that a possibility here. Mr. Hunt, I have to tell you, and Dr. Holmes, I think your coaching clinic is finally paying off. I've been attending a lot of football games this year, and boy, the sportsmanship on the field is fantastic, I think. May not always win. The coaches are doing a great job, but it's been fantastic to see the kids, just killing each other out there with their shoulder pads, but then, high-fiving each other and helping each other up after they clobber each other, but it's been good. And last but not least, I participated also in the City of Riverside is doing a big economic development overhaul plan, and I was asked to participate in a focus group for arts and entertainment. And one of the things they asked our group was what we thought was working in Riverside and what was not working. And I very happily got to tell them all about our VAPA program and Anne Marie and all the support that our board has been and our staff has been giving to our VAPA program. So that's out there too. So I just love to brag about our USD. So thanks everybody for doing a good job. Appreciate it. All right. You want to applaud? Oh yeah. Yes. Burst into song. Okay. Public input. Mrs. Martin, do we have any public input for any items on the agenda? All right. So our next item on our agenda is, I've skipped my thing here. Mine is out of order. I know we've got our consent calendar coming up, but yeah, see? I got cut off. Okay, there we are. All right. My paper was cut off on the bottom. My apologies. All right, so we start with our study session, and I know I see Dr. Lewis is standing, and this is on our career technical education, correct? So we get to hear all the good things about that we can share. Thank you.
Thank you. President Lockdawson, Dr. Hanson, and members of the board. Just quickly as an intro, thank you so much for making the time and 2 Fridays ago to tour our district and see so many of the wonderful things happening across our district for students that, as you said earlier, Mr. Sosa has a great summary, what you think of career technical education, and then when you go visit and see what our students doing, they are doing some of the most advanced work. So I know we have guests here, but Ron and Donna and all of the teachers that have built such a robust program, which is great to show that off. So thank you for making the time. And I'd like to introduce Ron Weston, who's going to come up and give a quick overview of what we've done for CTE.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board President Lockdawson, members of the board, Dr. Hanson, Mr. Sosa, thank you so much for your kind words. September 7th was a great day. It was an opportunity for us to show off the programs that we offer to our students in RUSD, and I really appreciate the time and the continued support that you give to our programs. I'd like to thank the teachers that are here as well. We have a number of administrators that helped put that day together, and so each one of them did their part to make sure that day went swimmingly. So we'll start with a little bit of data, and I wanted to start up at the top. Last year's enrollment numbers were just under 4,800 students enrolled in a CTE course. We have 38 pathways in our district. They make up 13 of the 15 California industry sectors. Of those 38 pathways, there are 94 courses within CTE. 43 are STEM related, 20 are VAPA related. And the number at the bottom there, 64, is incorrect. It's now 70 of our courses are UC A through G, and I believe we're still looking for the last 4 to come in. And we've got a few that we're hoping we get in at the midterm in January, so that's pretty exciting. We have 34 articulated courses in 5 local colleges. Just got the number on Friday. We had 837 students receive college credit in a CTE or college-related course through our high schools. And then we had 60,000 plus hours of work-based learning. And just as a reminder, work-based learning is the opportunity for students to listen to guest speakers, go on field trips, go on job shadowing events. Sometimes it's mentoring, and sometimes it's internships. So we want to be able to give those students the opportunity to find out exactly what it is to actually do the job. So that's an exciting thing. So we'll backtrack just a little bit, because in 2015 our USD started with 12 CTE pathways. And this year we have 38, so we've been able to grow our program by 3 times at least over the last 3 years. Very exciting. Some of the things that we've been able to accomplish is that we brought our ROP programs under the CTE banner. They're teaching our students. They should be integrated into our professional development. Any opportunities that we have for teachers to gain additional knowledge is a great opportunity. All of our CTE teachers are credentialed in their appropriate industry sector. We've added 2 shop classes. We brought back auto at Lincoln, which is very exciting. And this year we've opened up construction at Ramona, which is still under construction, but it's a great opportunity to get that ball rolling. And Mr. Hunt, you mentioned working with IBEW. That's one of the things that we have on our list. We've met with Mr. Rush before, and we want to be able to continue that and start that partnership. We've significantly upgraded our classrooms with current industry standard equipment. And then last May we hosted our first annual CTE showcase, where we had 30 pathways with 50 student participants and over 40 industry partners who attended. Here's a list of our CTE pathways. Again, 13 of the 15 California state industry pathways. I'm very proud of the building and construction trades that we just started, and the work that Jasmine Jaime over at Lincoln is doing with those students in the auto program. Just a reminder, and Mr. Sosa went through and did a great job of sharing what everybody saw, but at Ramona, they got a chance to look at the cadaver table, and at Arlington, our students went through and I believe they were working on an anatomy physiology lesson using the skeletal models. At King High School, they got a chance to look at the $350,000 printer that we were able to purchase with state funds. And then, of course, North, I think, was the biggest hit, watching everybody get the handcuffs put on. Told the teacher beforehand, I am not getting the handcuffs put on. So, at Lincoln, again, we saw the small engine repair room, and then at Poly, we were able to see the music technology program in action. But we also do some extended learning for our students. The 3 logos on the left-hand side are part of our STEM Leaps and STEM Pull program. I'd like to take a second and thank Mr. Borns for all of his support. He's a contributor not only in hosting the events, but in helping plan. He provides monetary support through the STEP conference and out of his own pocket. And the law enforcement and fire safety we just concluded our 3rd year of that. Is that correct? Right? Okay. And then we started for the first time ever our public utilities learning lab, which was really kind of cool. They got a chance to learn the electrical side of the thing as well as the water. And I want to thank Sharon Gutierrez from the city, Riverside Public Utilities, for all of her support and all of her leadership in getting that program up and running this year. We also have our Clean and Green vocational training program. We had over 50 students that finished that program in May, and a number of those students have enrolled at Norco College in their facilities management apprenticeship program, which is a brand new program, very exciting. We also have a number of kids that we'll be working with this year at Grid Alternatives. We're going to have 30 students from Lincoln being able to go out and get some solar training, which is very exciting, because once they've completed their 16 hours, they're eligible to go out and do more builds and then begin to apply or go into an apprenticeship program. So the bottom circle there is what's next. Well, we don't really know. That's what we have to find out. And so our goal is to be able to come up with these creative programs to either extend learning opportunities to our students who are already enrolled in a CTE pathway, or to provide those opportunities for students who do not have that opportunity. So we're pretty excited about some of the things that may come down the pike here very soon. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So when you say what's next, we don't know, how are we assessing the business community of Riverside and finding out whether or not there's something coming up that they would like to see so that we could bounce off them?
So we work closely with the Chamber of Commerce. We're part of their business education partnership, and so a lot of these ideas come out of some of those meetings. I will say that we are working with Breaking Barriers United. It's a police training program for students at Arlington and Ramona. That's going to get started in the next couple of weeks. We're working on an agriculture program with the city of Riverside. Not sure exactly where it'll take us, but it's someplace to get kids plugged into agriculture. And then we've also talked to a professor at UCR to try to get a summer film intensive to be able to have kids come in, learn how to script write, learn how to shoot a film, short 2-minute video, do all the music, do all the production, and then be able to show that at a student film festival. So we're trying to come up with these creative ideas that allow students to get that hands-on experience.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to, but thank you, Ms. Alvey, for that question. But, you know, we heard at Good Morning Riverside this week, our Chief Executive Officer of the county, George Johnson, talk about how this county is going to double in population by 2040, I think it is. So looking at what's in Riverside is important, but looking overall, I believe that if you could look at, I know that UCR Extension has it, I believe CBU is even starting to school in it, but construction management and construction estimating are two careers that do very well, and also the civil side of things, just the surveying. But I would like us to find out more about that and working with UCR Extension on the environmental certificates.
We will definitely do that. I know that we're working on setting up a date and a time to meet with the CBU professor who's overseeing that new construction management program to help with our Ramona students get plugged in over there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Our next slide shows our industry, and the list that I had for you on the 7th shows over 200 of our industry partners. That is obviously something that continues to grow. We want to be able to start small, establish a relationship with our industry partners, get them to come out, do the industry, the guest speaking, do field trips to their facilities, and then work on the mentorship and the job shadowing and the internship possibilities for our students. So that number is growing. If it stayed stagnant, we wouldn't be doing our work.
So in my report, I talked about Sacramento. When they came down last week, we gave them that report of all the 200, and we're using them as guest speakers all the way to internships. And that was one thing that they were very impressive with the support that we have from the business community and how intentional we are being at bringing that partnership together to grow our CT. CT is one of the things that they called out as a model program up and down the state. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. Very exciting. We have 3 goals for this year. The first goal is work-based learning. So 60,000 hours was a rough estimate. Using that business and industry partner list, we're trying to compile the actual number of hours so that we can have, obviously we want to grow beyond 60,000, but we want to be able to provide as many students with those work-based learning opportunities as we possibly can. Our second goal is to increase the number of articulation agreements with our local community colleges. We'd love to have a pathway have at least one articulated course, if not multiple courses. And then we also want to increase that number of UC A through G classes. So students are graduating from high school, they can make a conscious decision about what it is that they want to do. And then the third goal is to continue to develop those partners. We've had a number of really good conversations with partners based on our involvement with the Chamber of Commerce and feedback from the board. And so as we continue to build those, we'll add to that number. And then finally, we were awarded a planning grant at the end of last year. The goal is to start to build a foundation from our elementary school to middle school to high school. And one of the things we want our kids to do in the elementary level is to begin to explore, begin to find out what careers are, not necessarily which careers, but get an opportunity to find out what a career really means. And when they get to middle school, we want them to start to engage in that career. So it's not spending a lot of time doing the hands-on, but it's enough so that they get a chance to understand that if it's a construction pathway, what that means. And then when they get to high school, it's really the experience. It's no longer sitting in the classroom and listening to the instructor, but really being able to do things. And so we're really excited about this pathway that we're going to try to plan this year with Jefferson, Sierra, and Ramona's Help Careers Academy. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Anybody from the board have a question? Mr. Weston, thank you very much. That was fabulous.
Thank you.
I shared the packet you gave us as well with some folks in the community. Former Mayor Ron Leverage and I were having lunch, and I shared it with him, and he was just bowled over, and he gave it to a bunch of other people. So I think it's something we've long envisioned for the city to go in the direction. I was speaking with somebody, I think it was from Norco College, and he was talking to me about the importance or difference between, I guess it's certificated or certified apprenticeships. Is there a term for that? Do you know what that is?
I don't know at the college level. I know that we're working with Norco College, and you might have been speaking to the gentleman from Norco College, Charles Henkels.
I think that was him, yeah.
Yeah, the apprenticeship model is the standard apprenticeship program, but the nice thing about Norco College is that they're trying to find out what it is that we are doing here in Riverside and trying to model or make a program so that our students, as they transition from high school to college, they have those opportunities.
And it sounded to me like that was fairly important to have that certificate on the end of it, or that it was some type of...
Yeah, it shows the growth that they've made over time, and then those certificates can go to a regular employer at the end of the time.
So glad to hear that you're talking about it.
Thank you.
And Ryan, I guess?
So if I could have just 2 more minutes, I'd like Dr. Angulo to come up to share a very new cutting-edge partnership that we've developed that is a great culmination to what we've talked about this evening. So Dr. Angulo.
Thank you. Good evening. As part of the work that Ron's been doing and us trying to explore different options out there with the community, we have partnered with Vocademy, and we're trying to explore different opportunities for our students. And our first opportunity was for 18 Lincoln students to complete 3 different pathways, so 6 students in each particular pathway to get those experiences. And we wanted to highlight that because Gordon Lawrence paid the $11,000 fee, so we want to make sure he was recognized.
Thank
for it.
you.
So it will continue. We are going to be looking at future opportunities with Academy, but after this pilot program. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Angulo. And thank you, Mr. Borns. Your generosity knows no bounds. We are so grateful. To say our appreciation. Okay, thank you. And I know Mr. Lee will be thrilled that we're working with Academy. It's something he's been pressing on for some time. Okay, if there are no other questions, I think we're going to move on to our next agenda item. Thank you, team. Thanks for supporters for coming out as well. I appreciate it. We're going to get an update next on the Grant Education Center renovation. Who's in charge? Mr. San Martin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Locke Dawson, Board of Trustees, Dr. Hanson. Tonight we have 2 exciting projects to present to you: boardroom project and the grant site renovation. With us this evening is also the project architects with HED Architects, Ms. Jeanette Lequer. She's here to help us with answering any questions you may have. And also with HMC Architects, we have Mr. Kevin Wilkerson. With the Operations Division, we have the design team here in the audience also that will help us out with questions and answers. We'll begin with the the boardroom project.
Can you tell us a little about HED? I don't, where are they from? HED Architects.
Sure.
Yeah, did they come up or?
Sure, come on.
Let's introduce themselves to the board.
Hello everyone, my name is Jeanette LeClaire. I'm K-12 studio leader with HED, which is Harley Ellis Devereaux, and we're a 5-office firm across the nation, 3 offices in San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Sacramento, and then in Detroit and Chicago. So we specialize in K-12 education design, higher education. So does that answer?
All right, so with
Yep.
this, this work is coming out of your San Diego office? right?
Yes, it is. Right.
Okay, so the boardroom is located at the Palm site. The scope of work that's being proposed, we're looking at renovations to bring the facility up to ADA compliance, or Americans with Disability Act. We're looking at renovating the restrooms, bringing those up to code, parking reconfiguration, and upgrading the audio, and also the visual systems with the voting systems too. The project is being proposed or estimated at $3.3 million and is being funded by RDA funds. We have an aerial photo here.
Excuse me, Sergio, would you just say what is RDA funds?
Redevelopment funding.
Thank you.
All right. The boardroom is heavily used throughout the year by different events. We have the public meetings, we have trainings, workshops, seminars, and so forth. We also, the Palm site also houses various district departments and services. This site plan or area shows the areas that are going to be touching with this project. We have the boardroom that's being renovated. We're looking at relocating the closed session conference room. We're looking at upgrading and bringing the existing restrooms up to building code and ADA compliance. We're relocating the existing staff lounge to conference room 6, and then we have also work being done at the large parking lot and also on the back parking lot where the project team is located. This next slide is a rendering of the proposed scope of work that's taking place here at the boardroom, looking from the stage onto the audience. There's a list of the scope of work that are listed on the bottom there of the slide. The major improvements here, though, is the leveling of the floor. With this significant change, it would allow us to first bring us up to ADA compliance, but also to remove those fixed seatings and allow us to install movable seatings, which give us the maximum flexibility to use this room for multi-purpose rooms, for training, conferences, and just throughout the year to have multiple uses and have that greater flexibility. The next slide here gives us a different perspective, now looking into or at the stage area. There's also that yellow path of travel, which gives us an indication where the floor has been flattened, gives us a straight path to meet our ADA's compliance. This next perspective is from a different view, looking again into the boardroom. This next slide is when I mentioned relocating the existing closed session conference room. This will be located where is that right now existing is the staff lounge. So this is a rendering of the renovated area that would serve as a conference room. The restrooms would also be renovated and brought up to code, both men and women. They're receiving partitions, new toilets and urinals, flooring, walls, and ceilings too.
And mirrors too.
And there's some mirrors too.
Okay, just want to clarify.
Yes, absolutely.
I just want to let everybody know I requested floor to ceiling doors, but I didn't get them, so.
Yeah, mirrors are very important for us. This next slide just to show us the parking lot that's being slurry and restriped and also bringing it up to ADA compliance.
Mr. San Martin,
Yes, sir.
when our architect showed us this last, go back to that last slide. Okay, I asked if you had an entrance, the right, coming down Mag, make an immediate right with the building on your right, thank you, Hanson being my pointer right now. We wanted to be sure, Mr. Lee and I did, that you were not using that to go directly back into the back lot. Is that been changed now?
Right where you were pointing, we put a gate to help control that traffic. As in addition to that, there's another gate up there to seal it off. I just want to make sure I can hear. And then the intent is for the actual traffic, to be able to enter this driveway, make one continuous loop, and then exit out to prohibit that cross traffic from going back and forth, to make it a bit more streamlined and a safer drop-off area for people.
I just want to be sure, Mr. San Martin, who's over facilities, hears that we do not want that traffic to be able to access that parking lot anywhere close to when, thank you, anywhere close to when they're having board meeting and/or now this room will be used for other functions, because you literally got a blind step, you're stepping off right there from our old building, which is now our boardroom, and there's young people who come and sing, get awards and all. So I want to be sure, Mr. San Martin, one, we don't have that, and two, if you do have it open during the day, that for the board operations and others, you would make sure that is closed as a regular function of how your staff prepares for the board and public to attend.
Okay. Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
Could I ask about existing, it's me. I know your sound is bouncing around. The landscaping, the trees that are there, are they intended to stay, or will all the trees be taken out? What is the plan?
The road cypress that are down the center are intended to be removed during this project. In order to give you the proper flow and the equal to amount of parking stalls that was necessary. There was a lot of cross traffic happening and confusion for people trying to park and navigate the parking lot. So
And what about those trees between the old parking lot and the new?
these ones will remain.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question also. So I think this is fantastic, everything that you're doing here, and I understand that this is for a district-wide objective. My only question though is the adult school, the staff, are they getting any input, and are they involved in having any say? Just because obviously this would have an impact on their day-to-day efforts.
Yes, the design team has met with the director,
Okay.
Rachel, because we are impacting relocating the staff lounge to a new location. But in terms of the boardroom, I'm not sure they have full input, but they've been involved in informing what we're doing at their campus, especially with the new redesign of the parking lot.
Okay, thank you.
And how do I now, ma'am, enter we have our parent resource center right there. So how am I going to enter that coming off the new or old parking lot? Or Dr. Haynes?
Right, so the main entry would be here, and you just enter the same way as you did before.
There's a walk down, there's a walk down the sidewalk.
Dr. Hanson, you recall, even with your predecessor, his predecessor, we've been asking for better signage there for our parents to know where that is, and in Spanish. So I hope we can include that in this project. Thank you.
Each of the outlying facilities here had accessible parking, and that will be maintained according to current standards.
And along the lines of what Trustee Hunt was saying, the signage is especially because we have a major street there. If we can capture it on the street itself, I think that would be.
We're set. You're right. We're set way too far back, and I know the city owns the frontage. I understand that right away. Excuse me. So we ought to be able to work with the city though. Have a good sign out there, because you really have to know where it is to find it. If you don't know where it is, you're not going to know where it is.
Just a turn here
Right.
with an arrow.
In Spanish as well. There's a lot of our, as you know, that is a lot of our clientele are non-English speakers. Thank you.
Okay, this really opened it up for questions regarding this specific project. Is there any more that we can address?
Yes, Mr. San Martin, in our committee we had talked about, I think the board would be interested in, go back to the aerial if you would, whatever, is that the actual palm itself, I say interior, but the interior outdoor area, which is sort of a mismatch now, which is in front of the old palm, thank you David, if you wouldn't mind. Our Vanna White today, Dr. David Hanson. And, so that, I think we'd be very interested, I don't know if it's part of their scope or not, maybe use a local landscape, but coming up with some sort of scheme that the board can look at, that y'all can bring to the committee, blah, blah, about how to make that much more enhancing. I know once a year, I'm sure we've all done an adult day, we usually have it there in the blazing hot sun to find, but we need a place, I think, that is a community-minded gathering place. When we do have young people there, or we do have receptions for folks and all that, instead of that little corridor, unless it's limit weather, something out there that would be really reflective of what this building's supposed to be about. So I'm just, if the board nods in approval, I'd like to see something.
Okay.
I'd like to see what that might be.
So you're talking about some sort of unifying
Yeah, just,
theme to make it
Right.
aesthetically more unified and pleasing.
yeah, I think we did some of that years ago at Ramona. We just, and that's what we're trying to do at Poly and Arlington both. We're taking the interiors, which were not ADA. This doesn't have that kind of insulation, but I think it needs to be, and again, I like to see it, it needs to be something that we try to improve a lot of that old area that's got a lot of mishmash going on, rose gardens and all that, and an area that can be used outdoors. Mona.
Maybe similar, like, projecting similar like this to the gauge, like what benches out front.
Yes, sir.
Those types of things, so as they do landscaping, that's the kind of.
So right now, we're not touching that area though. But it would be additional scope, and is that what I'm hearing, that the board would like to authorize additional scope dollars towards
No,
this
I don't.
project?
Well, we don't know what the dollars are, you know. Is it $1 or is it?
Well, if we were to consider it now, we would include it into what we would submit to DSA, because this is a DSA project, right? So if we want to consider that, then we would go back to the drawing board and then we would scope that out and bring it back. Otherwise, we would leave it to the project that we would be doing, not necessarily in the next few years, but the whole Palm site is scheduled to be upgraded once we're done with the next 3 projects, which is the DO grant and this. At one point, we would like to modernize the rest of the building, and at that point, that would be a good time to include the
Thank you.
landscaping.
Just to remind, the touch points, you have the restrooms, the board section, the boardroom, the parking lot. That's the first scope of work that's being done. When you have a proposal that he's suggesting that would increase the scope of something in the front of the garden beds.
Well, I think the board will agree. I don't want to hold this up going to the DSA. We need to get in there sooner or later. But at a future time, and maybe before that, just look at what we could do, get some ideas from a local landscape architect or whatever, and let's come back. I think it is a curb appeal thing as well. You know, otherwise, right now, I'd like to have a nice sign out farther, because usually when people want to know where we meet, I finally just give up and say, you know where Dairy Queen is. And so I'd like to have, you know, I know we trim back the trees and all, but something that really shows it's a great spot.
That whole area, that quad is underutilized.
Yeah.
What we would like to do is we'll come back with a proposal, either landscape, but also combine the hallway. There's a wrought iron, it kind of separates as you can go into it. So we'll come up with some ideas how we can connect it so that we can maximize those uses during board meetings or other events. So we'll bring it back to the operations board subcommittee and with the dollar.
There's some nice arches there, it'd be a nice connection.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's a beautiful public campus. Probably our best for sure.
Okay, the next project is the grant.
Oh, here's one last
site.
thing.
Yes, sir.
We did ask you, and I want to be sure it's being taken care of, members of the board. We really don't do a great job on advertising our agendas to the public. We're supposed to post them. Next time you go to one of our board meetings, it's a glass case with a little tiny print and a little tiny piece of paper. We need to do a better job. You go to the city, that they have, of course, they have windows to do it in, but they have television screens on the vertical that shine out. So we do want to come up with something that helps us help fulfill our commitment to the community, to let them know what our agenda is. In and out.
Thank you. The next project again is the grant site. The scope of work on this site, we're looking at again bringing the facility up to ADA compliance or upgrades. This is again this is addressing the American with Disabilities Act. There's some seismic and retrofit work that we need to include on this project, replacing the mechanical systems like the HVAC systems, exterior painting, parking striping, site work, fencing, electrical and plumbing, classroom finishes, and auditorium improvements. This project is being estimated at $7.5 million, and is being funded with redevelopment funds. This is an aerial of the existing campus. This site plan shows the areas that we'll be looking at in terms of the development that's being looked at. We're addressing the parking again for a maximum use of the facility, but also ADA compliance and accessibility. Site work, which includes landscaping and path of travels, and the core of the work is on the existing facility, which is a historical building, and also securing the campus with new ornamental fencing.
Mr. San Martin, can you tell me why, first of all, why we aren't addressing the area around the portables, and second of all, do we need the portables?
Sure. So on this site plan, there's 6 portables that we're showing on the top of the slide. We have been working on those throughout the last year. That's currently where PGS is being housed. We've just completed a whole renovation of those portables. There is a portable where CSCA is being housed that needs a little bit of work, but ultimately when this site becomes a school in 10, 15 years from now, those portables will go away.
They're still ugly.
Yeah, and the committee brought this up, that 2 things. One, we'd like to see those portables moved towards the back, off of Brockton, and so that they are a terrible image out there. And it would take some plumbing, electrical hookups and all that. The other thing we've asked, I don't know what that building is over there on the very right NBC Almond. What is that red thing? Is that a building? What is that?
It's
Okay, it's a low level. Well, it's not over there, obviously. But can you go back to your aerial, Mr. Sandler? Okay. All right, see the green area over there? And some of the blacktop? Committee proposed and asked staff to look into, thank you, Dr. Hanson. Meeting with Dr. White and RCOE, they are in desperate need of parking. Why not, instead of us having to mow it for a few years, why don't we give it to them on a lease for 10 years, if they'll build it out, and we can have extensions on it. I don't know if the school's gonna come quickly in 10 years or not. But let them park it, we get to park it. And by the way, if we do that, along with Dr. Gala on the very end, I think, who owns the very end of property, which is on the other side of Almond up against 14th, we can, with his permission and RCOE, we can vacate Almond, and we both get a side of it. So that increases our land, but if we worked with Dr. White and her staff, I think that would solve a lot of our parking needs and theirs, and be a good joint project. And then move the modulars back towards that way.
We did have a discussion with RCOE. They have plans, and they're actually going to build a parking structure on the property that's facing that field. And it would not make sense for them to have it for a period of time, because they would need it to be an ongoing thing, and we would need it to go back to be in fields for an elementary school in the future. So it just didn't make sense. And they do have a parking structure, an actual several level parking structure that they've had plans for. So that will address their needs for parking. And we might want to have a joint use with them to use their site.
but also the purpose of this project will serve two purposes really. First is to address the immediate needs, interim housing needs throughout the district. We're currently housing PGS and staff developers on that site, including CSCA. But when we bring to the Operations Board Subcommittee next month the district office project, we may need this site to house and operate from here for a year. So it's about timing. We have reached out to RCOE and they are interested because they also need parking. They're lacking parking, and again, as Ms. Kakish mentioned, they have a parking structure that they're looking at building, and they would consider working with us to develop that field. However, it comes down to timing and when our projects move forward. The second need or purpose for this site is to build an elementary in the future, 10 or 15 years from now. That's ultimately the goal and the long-term plan for this facility.
Let me ask, on that, back to, please go back, thank you. On Ms. Kakish's point, Board, we know that, let's fast forward 10, 15 years, we're gonna do a downtown elementary. I don't think you're gonna, even if a board wants to, you're not gonna be able to deal with Grant. I mean, Grant's gonna have to stay what it is. I don't know if it can be used for an elementary school. So without Grant, the old Grant itself, which would probably be some sort of professional offices for our district, I would think. Do you have enough room left, I'm sure you have a two-story, for an elementary school plus the playground and all that that's needed? Which leads me to, maybe it's a good idea to negotiate with Dr. White now on behalf of the district to have their own floor there eventually, that our people could park in. Go ahead.
I think architects are very, very creative and artistic, and anything is possible, including preserving the historical site of the site. And I think they can make it as a highlight of the school versus an obstacle.
Well, isn't this only 5.5 acres total?
Yes.
But you can add a two-story building, all of where portables are. We could be adding it.
We can use the area around Grant to surround it.
I guess that is where I was coming from, is this is a historical site. And had I been around when they made the decisions to put the portables there, I probably would have fought them on that, because it blocks the view of the historical building.
Right.
And it would be so nice to move the portables back so that the historical school kind of shines. If we had an opportunity, that would be better.
That's our ultimate plan, is to get rid of the portables, and at that point, there might be even other ideas than the two-story building to make it an elementary school. But currently the portables, I know they look like they're not as nice from outside. Once PGS holds an open house, you'll see that we have really created a great space for our staff for a temporary basis until we are able to find a permanent place. And ultimately have it be the district office and the adult school would be our ultimate plan, like District Office 1 and District Office 2, and Grant would go back to being elementary. So for now, we're talking about 5 to 7 years before we start planning any of that. The portables on the inside have gone under a very light modernization, I would say, to house the staff comfortably, in my opinion. I hope they would agree. And you would see it at the open house. There's an open house scheduled for October 18th.
Yes. If moving the portables is just not even an option, and I understand that would be expensive and you might not want to do that, could we at least look at some clever architectural magic to do something on the Brockton side to make it look better so that it isn't quite as unsightly?
Sure, we can do that.
Use some architecture magic, HMC.
That's good.
Okay.
Which of those portables are still there, Mr. San Martin? I think you said some of them are gone already.
Yes.
There's only 6 left.
6.
Those are gone.
Oh, those are gone. What about the ones up front?
They're all there.
The ones on the second level along 14th Street on the other side, those are still there. Those would be, let's see.
Ones up top there, but
Those are still there. Those have been cleaned up, and those would be used for interim housing when the district office project moves forward.
what about the ones at front Brockton? They're all still there?
Those are there.
And how much would it cost to move them? What is it? I'm assuming it's expensive. What's expensive?
Well, the building itself is fairly low cost. It's the utilities infrastructure to relocate it to its new location. So it is costly. We're looking at about maybe $200,000 per portable.
That's costly.
How much does the portable cost?
$75,000 roughly.
75, but the utilities to it are 200,000.
The infrastructure.
All right, we need to move on.
And we need the portables right now, is what we're saying, that we can't really, until we renovate the inside of the building, we really can't need the space.
Okay, so there's 4 major areas of scope of work that's being proposed on this site. We're looking at medium and high priority improvements, and you have the list there. We have also seismic safety upgrades and code requirements that are mandatory by the state. This is a perspective view from looking at from the west side of the building. This is looking at the site from 14th Street. Now this gate and the sign monument are optional. This is just a representation of where a gate would go if we would move forward with this.
Can I add? I'm sorry, but this is the first time we've had a chance to look at this. The rendering, and I'm thinking that it's just for our purposes of seeing where it is, but this isn't at all in keeping with the historic nature of the building, and I would like to see a decorative gate and a gate and a structure that was much more in keeping with the Victorian nature and the curves and the Spanish architecture. So I would like that to be more in keeping. This is modern and penitentiary-like.
We will do that.
Yeah, and I don't think Mr. Lee and I had quite a keen insight, Ms. Alabi does, but I agree now looking at it. That's very modern and sort of blah compared to what's behind it, so.
This is just one of the studies we did and we're not planning.
This is an example of one of the studies we did, and we're not planning on doing this. Right now, it's just going to be a much more simplified monument sign only, not the concrete pilot strips that is much more keeping with the building. And we're still looking at different options, as Mr. Sullivan said.
And it also, we're suggesting that we would probably name it something other than Grant. Also, that'll come back to the naming committee.
I just think that it should, the gate and the structure on the outside, whatever monument sign you use or whatever you're suggesting, should mimic the style of the building. So it should evoke that same arches. I would, if you arched the wrought iron, I know that's more expensive, but I think that would be in keeping. Or if you, I don't know, use some kind of finials. I don't know, something. You know best.
So we're making note. We're making note. We will come up with some options and alternatives, and we'll bring those again to the Operations Board Subcommittee. This is from the corner of 14th Street in Brockton, looking at the new fencing that's being proposed, and you'll see also there's some sign monuments that are being proposed on that corner and on to the two ends of the one on 14th Street and one on Brockton. This is a rendering of the auditorium, which is being proposed or being renovated to be more of a multi-purpose room for professional development, conferences, and trainings. There's a conference room that's being formed within the building itself. Part of the scope of work on renovating the multi-purpose room, the state's requiring us to bring the existing restroom up to ADA compliance, but also to expand the existing women's restroom and build a men's restroom on the opposite side of the building. And with that, we can take some questions.
So you can have AV and upgraded audio visual in the training room, the large room?
We're going to have audio and visual systems upgrades.
Do you have a floor plan up there?
The closest floor plan will be on the first slide here.
Okay.
So
Maybe in the
it's not
future
that
you could bring or send something out to the board on what the floor plan is, just some ideas by numbers of what you're doing in each area. I know there's no lounge there, and little offices and things like that.
Okay, you can do that.
So, this is the first time that the board has seen it that's come out of the subcommittee. So it sounds like we need to have go back to the subcommittee, is that what I'm hearing, for some additional review, or are you guys going to bring it back to the whole board to see some of the comments that we made tonight?
So the design team is looking for direction from the board, authorization to move forward to get us to for plan review at the Division of State Architect. The majority of the work is really bringing the building up to code compliance with ADA, but also retrofitting the facility. These other areas like the ornamental gates or fencing, some landscaping, we can bring back to the board, the Operations Board Subcommittee for discussion. We can bring a floor plan of how the inside of the floor plan would look, but it would be, what we're looking at tonight is authorization to give direction to the architect to move forward with plan review.
Okay, So I think it's okay to bring that back to the board. I don't think we'll be sending you back and forth. And Mr. Hunt has indicated that it doesn't need to go to committee. However, I'm cognizant of Mrs. Ellaby's concerns. I have the same ones. So what is it that we are asking them specifically to look at and bring back to us? And the sign, the monument sign, the gates, what else about the?
Well, it's all exterior.
Anything got a curb, but the curb.
It's the curb appeal and the image of the center to the community, I think, that I'm concerned with.
This and Palmer are oldest ones that are seen by oldest ones seen by the community. I think Ms. Allaby's points are very well taken. And we did talk to the architects about, I need to run out to Redlands. I just think what Redlands has done with their monument signs around the different parts of the city is very well done. And because they're an old citrus city like us, they've incorporated some of that into, I think, with tile work and others. And so, so you're saying, Mr. San Martin, if we gave you the go-ahead on the grant renovation, but we held back right now, just we'd like more input and thought on the exterior fences and all that, would that not hold up the grant renovation going to DSA?
Right, I think we have time, and I can ask Kevin to give us some more information on that, but we will move into design development and ultimately to construction development, which gives us time to come up with some alternative designs that we can work with the operations board subcommittee.
But, and it's fine with the I think Mr. Lee and I both agree. You can bring it right back to all of us here. We don't need to bring it to one or the other. Let's just work on it together on that part. I'll bring it in. Also, I'd like to know more, I mean, I'm surprised you bring it up, Ms. Elby. I'd like to know more what your plans are as far as the one thing that's left after the earthquake is the fountain. So what are we doing with the fountain? How are we memorializing the fountain? And don't tell me now, but I think it's something you bring back with all of that. But those are important curb appeal type things. And we don't want to lose the fact to our community that that fountain goes back to, if Ulysses S. Grant ever did come here, he would have seen it. So, I mean, it goes back a long, it's the only thing left, is that right? From the
Yes.
earthquake? Yeah. So I'd like to know more. I mean, that's fine,
Just a
we
quick
have
one
time.
is, the plans include renovating the fountain, and there are some original retaining walls from the previous school that we're repainting as well.
The fence, the wrought iron fence, is supposed to be a security fence, isn't it?
Needs to be.
Okay.
We have a homeless problem there, I think.
And then final, so I think you heard the concerns of the board, what we'd like to see. Was that also including some sort of, something to sort of mitigate the look of the portables from the street? Or is there some sort of screening or something we can do to make it look a little nicer? Could that be within the scope of the work?
We can look at some fencing along the,
And fine.
behind those portables,
And fine.
but ultimately those portables will go away.
You know what they used to say? They say doctors bury their mistakes and architects put ivy on them. So, you know, let's put some plants up around and just hide it, right? And you were not a you though, did you? I think you learned that first year of architecture school.
No, and I know I know when we were in planning commission too, we always preferred ivy because it's tag proof.
Yeah,
You
that's
can't,
right.
you can't graffiti on ivy, so, yeah, I think anything to just sort of make that look a little more aesthetically pleasing as nobody likes it.
Great.
All right,
We will do
thank
that.
you.
Thank you very
Nice work.
much.
Thank you very much. All right, next up we have our marketing plan. Let's see. We're going to hear from Mr. Grayson regarding an update on our community perception survey and how this is related to our image and marketing. Are you introducing that, Mr. Grayson?
I can introduce you. Pardon me.
So somebody just make an introduction before we go in here.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Hansen, Board of Trustees. This is an update on a mission that you sent us on about a year ago when we had started to see that we can do a much better job of selling our story for Riverside Unified School District. And so since then, our communication team has been working on options and opportunities, but you've also engaged in trying to take a look at the mission and motto for the district. And so we're back with a study session that gives you an opportunity to discuss the final draft of the mission and values, and select and take action on the motto at the action section of the public meeting. When we close the study session, we open the public meeting. And at this point, I'd like to invite our team from communication, Mr. Gleason, and our team from M3 to give us an update about the survey and take us through the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. So just a quick introduction of Richard Bernard from FM3. Before I go into the discussion about the mission, values, and the motto for RUSD, I wanted to have Richard come up and give his detailed account of the RUSD Community Perception Survey that we undertook over the last couple of months. This was, of course, something that we originally brought to you in front of the board about 3 years ago when I did the initial needs assessment for RUSD, where we said we need to know what the community thinks about RUSD before we really can get deep into marketing our district. So this is finally kind of a culmination of the first part of this community perception survey, and I'm really excited to hear what Richard from FM3 has to offer us as we move forward in our marketing campaign. And then later in this meeting, I will come back up and do the dive into the mission, values, and motto. All right, so Richard.
Good evening. I want to thank the district, the president, the board, superintendent, for inviting me here to give you the results of what your parents think of the district. A couple things before I start. The first thing overall is the numbers are pretty exceptional in terms of support. So kudos to you, but there can always be improvement. So keep that in mind. And I'm also just want to point out that I'm the messenger, and keep that in mind. Okay. So a little bit of background. Project goals. We were brought on to deal with the marketing and branding of the district to retain current and attract new students. The kinds of things we focused on are what parents like and do not like about RUSD, the issues of RUSD to address, that they need to address, parents' top priorities when looking for a school for a child or their children, key issues that would make parents more likely to choose RUSD for their child or children, and the strengths and weaknesses of RUSD's current communication tools and methods. So we conducted two different types of research methodologies. The first one I'll get to in a moment, which were focus groups. The second one, which is the bulk of my presentation, that's why it's the lead. We conducted a dual mode survey that is online and by cell and landline between August 22nd and August 28th of this year. Surveys were completed using a random sample of 1,057 parents of children who are either currently attending RUSD or just recently graduated in the 2017-2018 school year. The telephone surveys were available in both English and Spanish, and the overall margin of error for the full sample, that is questions asked of everyone, is plus or minus 3.0%, and the margin of error for those that were questions that were randomly asked of half the sample is a little larger at 4.3%. And if you're very good at math, and I suspect a lot of people are very good at math here, and you see something doesn't equal 100%, I blame that entirely on rounding error. So to inform the drafting of the survey, we did several things. One is we met with, I would say, 30 or so RUSD staff who were incredibly generous with their time and told us a lot of things that, had we not met with them, we would have not been aware of in terms of interpreting data and the ways of asking questions. So I just want to thank the staff, and I particularly want to thank Richard and Justin, because they represent your district very well. They were on top of things. If I needed some information, they got back to me immediately, and it was a pleasure to work with them. So we started with, in terms of the research, 5 focus groups. And the 5 focus groups consisted of the targeted demographic groups here. We had about approximately 10 people in each group, parents of children who are in elementary, middle school, and then high school, and then parents with kids under the age of 5 or under, some of whom are enrolled in RUSD preschool, and some of them aren't. They're enrolled somewhere else, or they're not enrolled. Parents of children who have never enrolled in RUSD schools, or previously enrolled but now are attending some other school. For example, if there was some school, private school, or a charter that they felt was better suited to their children. They were no longer there. And finally, we did a group in Spanish among parents of children who are both in elementary, or who are in one or more elementary, middle school, and high school. So that was the research background. Yeah, please.
I have a question. So I know that the outcomes that you're sharing are from all of those collectively, right? But did you notice any distinctly differences between like the Spanish-speaking focus groups specifically and the rest of the input, just generally speaking? In terms of
there were clearly a few things. I intend to get that in to talk about that in the presentation. But one thing I will tell you is that those who conducted the survey in Spanish, and I'm going to disproportionately focus on the quantitative because it's more generalizable. Focus groups are not necessarily so for a whole host of reasons, particularly with that group. But they tended to be much more favorable in their rating of the district than non-Latino parents. Okay, so we started my glasses aren't that good, so I'll try to stay here. We started by getting a general perception of the job performance that the district itself does. And we asked them to rate the job performance. And you could see 84% said either excellent or good. 12% said just fair, which we asked this in every focus groups, in the focus groups, and I asked it in the case of the RUSD focus groups as well. I asked them to tell me what fair meant, and most of them said average. So keep that in mind. It doesn't sound as bad as it might if you didn't know that. 3% said poor, and 1% didn't know. And I wanted to focus a little bit on the 3%, because everyone's going to say, well, who are those 3%? You know, my understanding is that last year you lost a little bit more than 500 students. 3% is quite equivalent to that, more than 500 students. And so you're going to see really great numbers here tonight, but I want you to also sort of see even the slivers that are perhaps problematic, either because people are unhappy or they're unaware of things, so that leads you to sort of focus on retaining the people you're losing, but also let's not forget the focus of trying to attract new folks, and some of them will compensate for some of the people you're going to lose. Because as I'm sure you all can appreciate, you're never going to please everybody, but to have a favorable view by 84% is a really nice number. When we asked the job performance of their child's school, we're still in the mid-80s in terms of excellent or good, but look at the intensity of the excellent, 42%. Whereas on the district it was 31%. So why is that? The reason is we found, and probably not surprising to you, that parents are much more connected to their child's school. They know what's happening very intimately. So if they're really happy, they're going to praise the school. And there's less certainty. There's a lot, but there's less certainty about the district overall, because some of them don't feel that they need to come to you to ask you for things, and I will get back to that shortly. I thought what I would do is, just in a couple of examples, show you for the job performance of the school, show you the reactions based on where the parents' children go. And you could see across the board, whether it's preschool, elementary, middle school, or high school, you're in the 80s in terms of excellent or good. The blue is excellent or good, the red is just fair or poor, and the gray, which is only 1% for the middle school, is the people who didn't know enough to offer an opinion. So you have across the board, I can't definitively tell you, oh, this type of school is performing better than another. The parents seem to think that the numbers are pretty high across. And then I'm mindful of the fact that whenever I present to board members, they all want to know what their area thinks. So in this case, I've presented the same about their individual schools in terms of job performance, and you could see every one of them is at least 81% or more, and the variation could be attributed to margin of error. So I know sometimes board members like to say, well, my area's doing better than this one. And there's not a lot of variation. You should be proud across the board. And then, before we get into a lot of messaging and the like, we asked them, how likely would you be to recommend an RUSD school to other parents who are looking for a place for their child to attend? And here you have 93% who say very or somewhat likely. So you have 2/3 saying very likely. And you have 6 saying not too likely or not at all likely. I think these are exceptional numbers. I think you should be very proud of them. But then, I'll remind you, my original point was, well, you've got 6% that say not too likely or not at all likely. That equals over 1,000 students. So something to keep in mind. I mean, you will never get 100% of people saying very likely. You just won't. So I think your numbers are great. So among the people who said very likely, we asked them in their own words. So we didn't give them categories. We just collected their responses, and then we categorized, we grouped them thematically. We said, why did you respond that you'd be very likely to recommend RUSD school to another parent? 25% said teachers, staff are good. 25% also said just a general positive response, but it wasn't very targeted. And then 17% said care about their students, and they help students. So I want you to remember that in this case, there are 701 people who responded to this question. And when we move over to the people who either said not too likely or not at all likely, we're at 67 people who responded to that response. So when you see 33% saying teacher and school quality, don't equate it to the 25% that said teacher staff is good. That the teacher staff are good, it equates to 175 respondents. The 33% for teachers and school quality relates to 22 individuals. So it's not apples to apples. But it gives you a sense. It's interesting, and I see this a lot. For some, the reasons why they like something are the same reasons why people also don't like something, depending on what their experiences are. And we see that as well. I also want to point out something, and we'll come back to it again later, is the third item. And that's issue about bullying. This came up in the focus groups, and we subsequently asked about it in the survey. And I think it's important for you to be aware of that. And also, I would be cautious to figure out how to describe what safety means. We have to think about the definition. For some, it's about, well, there's not going to be a gunman that comes to our school and shoots up everyone, But there are a lot of elements of safety, right? Be it bullying, be it violence, being, safety in the classroom. So all those things should be encompassing. And I'm very mindful of the fact that when I was here last time, there were several board members who rightly said, we shouldn't overpromise. We shouldn't say, we're extremely safe because God forbid something happens, and they'll say, we trusted you, you lied to us. but you do have to make them feel safe, and that's an important question. Okay. Parents' priorities in a school. So we asked parents, we read them a list of factors that some parents consider when deciding which school they'll place their child in or which district they'll place their child in. And we asked them, how important is that factor to you personally when choosing the school district for your child? And we gave them a scale of 1 to 7, where 1 is not at all important and 7 is very important. And then so you see the mean or the average scores on the right-hand side. And for those people who are not comfortable with average scores, I also categorize them across. The dark blue is the very important, which is a 7, so that's the extreme. A 6, which is the lighter blue, is somewhat important, and 5 together are somewhat important. 4 is neutral, and 1 to 3 are not at all important or not too important. And a couple of things to point out here. One is the number one issue, though there are several ranked statistically close, offers a safe environment for students, teachers, and staff. So that's important. Has well-qualified teachers, offers a well-rounded education, makes all students and family members welcome, has high graduation rates. All of these sort of rank very high. This doesn't speak to RUSD yet. It's just what they think are important aspects. And then, as you go down the list, you'll see that the numbers begin to drop. I wanted to point out that something that sort of came up at the bottom of this slide, you'll notice 75%, that's for STEAM. Science, technology, engineering, performance, and visual arts and math. So remember 75%. The other half the sample heard STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and there was 67%. So you're broadening the importance of your schools by incorporating that other element that was also mentioned in some of the focus groups. I also want to point out that on the scale of 1 to 7, none of the items came close to even the midpoint. All of them were quite high in terms of importance. Everyone wants everything from a school, and that's really clear. But now let's give them the same list as we just went through, and we asked them, again, we've read this randomly. We asked them now, please tell me how much you personally believe or personally think that these words or phrases apply to RUSD. Scale of 1 to 7 again, where 1 does not at all apply, 7 applies a lot. Again, you can see the mean scores on the right-hand side, and the dark blue is the applies a lot. Now, I've never seen an analysis, I've been doing this for 16 years, where the importance scores lower than either satisfaction or applies. So you're in the same sort of category as all the other research. They have this aspiration. Frankly, you guys come close to it, but you're not quite there. But then that's the opportunities for improvements. So we gave them this list, and what was striking to me is if you graph it out, you'll see there's a high correlation between what's important to them and what applies. And that tells me that the district is in sync with parents in terms of their importance and what you offer. Because if it's highly important or it applies a lot, if it's ranked very close together, it means you're doing a good job. There was only one outlier in the whole group, and that's at the bottom of slide 18. Treats all schools equally. And that's a theme that came up a lot in the focus groups and came up other places in the survey. They think it's important. They had, if we go back, we see that treats, the third item down here, this is important, treats all schools equally with 70%. And then, does it apply? 49% says it applies a lot. So that's one thing to consider. And I think it's important to consider it particularly when you have a bond that you are going to be spending money on. That's a really important idea to be considering. And then at the bottom, I just want to point out a couple of things where your numbers are still good and applies is way above the midpoint. But the third item down, I just sat through an amazing presentation on your relationship with businesses and internships, and you've got at least a quarter of the folks who know nothing about it. They don't know, and another approximately 8% that say doesn't apply. So you basically have about a third who have no idea at all, and you have such a good story to tell. So I mean, that's the theme of some of the findings is you have a great story to tell. Not everyone knows about it. It's an opportunity, which was the intent of the research. We then gave them a series of agree-disagree statements, and we asked them if they agreed or disagreed with the statement. These mostly came out of the focus groups, things that arose as an issue, and we wanted to say, well, we want to see, is it one individual, or is this generally a perception across parents? So I'd like to sort of spend a little more time on this slide and go through some of the items. The first, and it's again randomized, but it's ranked by total agree. So the dark blue is the strongly agree, the light blue is the somewhat agree, and then the pink is the somewhat disagree, the red is the strongly disagree, and the gray is they don't know enough to offer an opinion. And I've aggregated the total agree and the total disagree on the right-hand side. The strongest in terms of intensity item in the whole survey was it's important that teachers, principals, counselors, the district, and me as a parent work together to ensure my child's success in school. They see it as a collaborative activity. 9 out of 10 people said strongly agree. You do not have that intensity anywhere else in the survey. Next, we asked this in a couple of ways, but I'll focus on this one. In the last couple of years, RUSD voters passed a school bond ballot measure to repair and improve local schools. There, we had 71% who said they agreed, but only 1 in every 2 said they strongly agreed. And you could see at least a quarter of the folks had no idea. So about 3 out of 10 had no idea. But I also want to point out that 21% that's somewhat agree, they're hedging their bets. They think it might be true, but they don't definitively know it's true. And why is that important? You have this really important bond measure, Measure O, that you want to invest in the schools. And I know voters by over 70% supported it. But I'd like you to put into context that 81,000 people, approximately a little more, voted on that measure in 2016. And there are 239, close to 240,000 18-plus residents in the city of Riverside. So that includes people who are not registered to vote, and also people who may have been registered to vote who didn't vote. And then I do a lot of election stuff, and I can tell you that a couple of days after any election, people kind of forget what they voted on because they waited to the last minute and they just ran through the ballot. So I'm going to suggest later that you consider talking about issues about investment rather than focusing on the actual bond. And the other thing that was clear from focus groups, but in my 16 years of work, I know people don't understand what the limitations of what you can spend on a bond. They don't understand it's just bricks and mortar. What they wonder, and we have to be careful about this, is they wonder, well, if you have all this money, why aren't you putting more money into the classes for programs and activities? They don't know the connection. So it's important to consider their lack of knowledge when communicating this information. The third item, my child's school provides him or her with healthy food options. We had never even considered that as an issue to talk about. No one ever brought it up, except in the focus groups. A couple of people did, not a lot. So we tried that out, and you could see 20% disagree and 10% don't know. So you've got 3 in 10 who just don't know enough or are incorrect. And I don't think people will choose a district based on your food healthy options, but it's good information to know. The next one is on the top of the page. The district is there to help parents when the child's school is unable to. You have 68% agreeing, a little less than 1 and 2 strongly agreeing, and you have about close to a third that either say that's not correct or they don't know. That's one of the opportunities that the district has, to try to explain to them what you offer that the local school doesn't. You're an added resource, and they want the more resources, the better. So here's an opportunity where you can tell your story in that respect. Finally, the last item. My child's school gets its fair share of the district's funding and other resources. And here you can see there's the lowest strongly agree at 38%. You have 14% who disagree, and a quarter of the folks who don't know. And so I think it's important, again, it's similar to the issue of treat schools equally. It's an issue that I think the district needs to think about. I realize not every school is the same. You have a lot of unique schools, but parents want to know that their child's school, doesn't matter about anyone else, is doing well and getting the resources it needs. And we asked, I want to get back to the bullying. We asked 2 different items, random half the sample heard the first one, a random half the sample heard the second one. The district has effective anti-bullying policies and procedures, and there 73% agreed, 16% disagreed. And then the other half heard my child's school is effective at dealing with bullying and fighting. And there you had the largest disagreement at 24%. A quarter of the folks said that they disagreed with that statement. That's clearly came up in the focus groups, which is why we introduced it. It's clearly an issue, and it does relate to the concept of safety, which is very important to me. So a marketing and branding survey would not be very good if it didn't have messaging to test. So remember, we asked earlier on, how likely are you to recommend RUSD students to other parents looking for schools? And we introduced 9 statements or messages. And we asked them, please tell me whether you find this statement very convincing, somewhat convincing, so dark blue, light blue, or not convincing as a reason why parents should have their child attend RUSD schools. So I've taken the very convincing and the somewhat convincing, and I've aggregated the total on the right-hand side. So the first thing I want to tell you is, this is clear evidence you have a great story to tell. I mean, these are very, very strong messaging and very good reactions to the messaging. Of the 9 items, the highest was 86% for very or somewhat convincing, and the lowest was 70%. So if anyone was running for an election, they would be a slam dunk for re-election. I realize we're trying to get 100%, so we can always do better. But the key messages that kind of stuck out were the STEM message, and these are just shorthand so that I can move quickly, but you see that message there. Retain and attract teachers, well-rounded education, and equity and diversity. Those were among, though there are other ones that are statistically very close. I want to move on to the what I would call one of the most contentious topics in the focus groups, which is the concept of district of choices. It sounds good to a lot of people. Many of the parents felt that it wasn't a true representation of their experience. I don't think that's probably surprising to anyone. You want your child to go somewhere, and if they don't get in, the system doesn't work. That's just intuitive. So we started by giving them, again, the battery of agree, disagree. Half the random sample of heard. Parents can apply to send their children to schools in the district that are outside their neighborhood. 79% agreed, so you had more than a half saying strongly agree. Only 10% said disagree, and 11% didn't know. And if you're not interested in moving your child to another school, why should you know? You may never have to pursue that in any way. The other half heard parents have the opportunity to send their children to schools in the district that are outside their neighborhood. 68% agree. Now it's a good number, but look at the differential of 11 points between can apply and have the opportunity. And some, at least one parent I remember saying, yeah, we can do this, but it's never going to work. So they see the distinction between the two. In this case, have the opportunity, 19% disagreed with that. So we wanted to look at the folks who applied for transfer. So we asked them if they, have you ever tried to apply for your child to attend a school that was not considered your neighborhood school? 41% said they had. Now remember, this could be over a very long period of time. This wasn't last year, depending on what child they had. Some of their children have been out of RUSD for a very long time, and they still have some children in there, so it could be one of those. But of the 41%, we asked, was the transfer successful? 78% said yes. And I was able to get some recent data, and it's very comparable to the recent data in terms of successful transfers. So I feel good about the data. And then we asked the parents who were successful how satisfied were they with the experience of applying. 92%, probably not surprisingly if you're successful. 92% said they were satisfied, 7% said they were dissatisfied, in spite of the fact they were successful. They may have had to do a lot of administrative, maybe in their mind they had to fill out a lot of administrative paperwork. They may have had to ask the district several times. We didn't have an open-ended question to ask, but those are the kinds of things that came up in the focus group. Of the 92 parents who were not successful, not surprisingly, 79% were dissatisfied with the process. Because, well, their kids didn't get in. And interestingly, I think it's interesting that 20%, in spite of the fact they were unsuccessful, were satisfied. So maybe they saw, my understanding is it's sort of a lottery, it's a random thing, there's no preferences, and maybe they thought, well, I'm a person who believes in equality for all, and maybe that's why they were satisfied. I want to move into the interactions with the district, and we looked at this in a variety of ways. The first way was, I'm going to mention some groups of people. Please rate your general satisfaction with the interactions with the group of people at RUSD. We mentioned these randomly. The dark blue is very satisfied. The light blue is somewhat satisfied. I've aggregated the total satisfied on the right-hand side. And the pink and the red are total dissatisfied. Again, I've aggregated them on the right-hand side. And the gray are the folks who didn't know enough to offer an opinion. These are pretty high numbers in terms of satisfaction. These are your frontline people in many ways. Certainly teachers, 91%, great number. I will remind you, though, that even a 9% or a 10% dissatisfied translates into a lot of students. And so, again, doing well, room to improve. In all areas. We asked about the children, the website, their child's school webpage. Half the sample heard that. The district webpage, you get 63% satisfied with the children's school's website, and comparable 65% with the district webpage. I'm not entirely clear people are able to differentiate between the two. But we gave them, we have to rely on them to be able to answer how they answer, and that could explain why the numbers are comparable. In the focus groups, less folks had visited the district website than they did the children's website. And some of the reasons why they were dissatisfied was they felt that the website was outdated and lacked the information they were looking for. But they didn't have a negative view about the website itself.
Which website, the district or the child school?
The child school.
So it was not updated.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then we wanted to know how they felt about whether they have a say or they're able to communicate with you, voice their concerns about their children's school on major decisions that affect their children. 70% said they did. So 7 out of 10 feel like you're listening to them, they hear your voice. 2 out of 10 said no, and 9% said, probably doesn't apply to them, they just didn't know enough to offer an opinion. So there's clearly, I think, a really good number, because generally people feel disenfranchised with any kind of government or any kind of agency, and you've got 7 out of 10 saying yes. But there, again, is room for greater opportunity. And then of the respondents who took the survey in Spanish, of which that was 22%, that took the survey, that was 233 parents. We asked them to rate the quality of the Spanish and the information they received. 63% said excellent, 26% said good. I'll remind you, just fair is kind of average at 10%, and you've got 1% that said poor. The parents at the focus group were, this was the only time we could get qualitative data about this issue. So I wanted to point out a couple of things that they had mentioned. The parents at the focus group said that the translated materials sometimes had spelling and grammar errors, which caused frustration. Some people also perceive that the information is more widely distributed to those folks in English than they receive in Spanish. I don't know that to be a fact, but that, again, this is perceptions, so it's important to make sure that everyone feels that they're getting the same information. And some Spanish-speaking parents also wanted more resources targeted specifically for the parents' home language. So, recommendations. So most parents are really pleased with RUSD and what they have to offer. However, a small percentage who are dissatisfied or unaware with the offerings can make a big difference in retaining students, as I suggested before. 3% equals over 500 students. Messages and themes to emphasize the safe environment of RUSD schools, and I talked a little bit about how you define safe to make it as broad as possible. Quality teachers, which you certainly have. Opportunities for well-rounded education, programs for science, technology, education, visual performing arts, and math, also known as STEAM, and you'll understand in a moment why I've read that out. RUSD's welcoming of students with diverse ethnic and racial and cultural groups. What's interesting is that Latinos were more likely to agree that the district was more welcoming of diversity than non-Latino whites, which I thought was pretty interesting. I would have anticipated the alternatives, so I guess you guys are doing a good job. RUSD's friendly and welcoming teachers and staff. You need to communicate that. Give parents information about the many programs that RUSD offers, but avoid the term district of choices. It just doesn't seem to resonate for the reasons I suggested. And then when using academic acronyms and buzzwords, be sure to explain the meaning. I sat through a wonderful presentation and a variety of people talking, and I know you know all these terms. We're in a cocoon. I work with schools all the time. I get it. But they don't have a clue. Some of them don't have a clue. Like AVID, GATE, CTE, which I appreciate that someone spelled out, and then STEAM and STEM. They intuitively, and some people know what it is, but intuitively they know STEAM or STEM is good. You know, it offers a lot of things, but they don't know what it stands for. So whenever you're explaining it, you may want to spell it out. Talk about school investments the district is making, and not so much on the bond, because it's, for a large percentage, is fairly unknown. Consider re-examining approaches on the following issues. Now, some of it you may be doing a great job, but there's a lack of information. So you need to sort of put that in perspective. Schools receive their fair share of resources from the district. We consistently saw that in the focus groups and throughout much of the survey. How the district handles incidents of bullying, clearly an issue that rose to the top. Among the few issues that rose to the top, it was one of them. Problem solving with parents and providing healthy food options. Emphasize a team's approach to ensuring children's success in school, including the district and the parents. They like the item that I said had the strongest intensity. They like the fact that there's all these diverse people working together in cooperation with the parents to make sure that their child is successful. Be sure all district office and school site staff are committed to being friendly and welcoming to parents. We saw in the focus groups that a few people had really negative experiences, and what was interesting is that parents of younger children were way more sensitive to this in the focus groups. They are very, very worried. You know, the parents, when they think of schools, if they're in high school, it's like, all right, what are my child's interests? How can the school nicely align with that? In the younger years, they want to know their child is being treated well, that they have opportunities. They're less concerned with the final end product, but they want to know they're moving in the right direction. Okay, and then lastly, improve consistency in the quality of translated material and ensure materials are distributed in a variety of ways. People get their information in a variety of ways. Most of it is word of mouth. So, you know, telling a lot of people is a good thing. My experience is that you don't have an abundance of parents coming to board meetings, even though I know you would love that. And I'm sure in your new facility that will encourage that. But you need to explain things in multiple ways. Keep school websites up to date and communicate to parents about the information that can be found there. And you may want to engage with parents to hear what do they want to see on the website. Most of the parents, at least in the focus groups, said, well, I just went on to see the calendar, school calendar. That was it. And then communicate that the district is an additional resource that parents can use to support their child's well-being and education. They don't know how much great things the district itself, independent of the school, can offer them as a resource. I mean, I've met most of your staff. You have exceptional staff who have a lot of knowledge and expertise and a lot of care about the students that that are in the district. People don't know that. So I think that's helpful. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Good presentation.
Comments? Yes, Dr. Kirk.
I just want to. Thank you. I just want to hear from Mr. Grayson. I think it's obvious that I'm assuming our communication strategy is going to adapt to this, but I just wanted to hear from you directly what your follow-up is going to be.
So, first of all, thank you, Richard. A lot of this was this was the first time I heard some of these things as well. Really insightful. I think as I'm sitting there, the thing that keeps going through my mind is going through a second needs assessment based on the information that we got today, and kind of almost prioritizing a new list of things that we need to focus on. I really appreciate the things we need to put emphasis on and things we need to re-emphasize. There's some messaging that we need to change probably, and so I think now a new needs assessment that I think should be done in partnership with our new marketing firm when we hire one. I think that kind of three-pronged approach with Richard and his team, our marketing firm, and our internal district team, I think we can put together a really strong kind of assessment and list of new priorities to focus our communications efforts on.
What's your time frame on that?
So the hiring of the new firm we hope to have by the end of this calendar year. Now that we have this information, it gives us a much kind of a greater first kind of pitch or ask for them. And then after that, I'll sit down with my team, I'll chat with Maze, and I haven't really thought of the time frame for that, but I'm sure Maze will have some recommendations on how soon we can.
Our target is to have an action plan for implementation before the next window of transfers to the district, and so that way we can align it to enhance and attract students to our district and to keep and retain our students.
Which is that next window of transfers happens this fall. And so we're talking pretty quickly to have that in place and move forward.
One of the things, just to add on to that, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when I come up, but we have been, just based on our early focus groups and some of the early information that Richard's given us, we've kind of been focusing our internal efforts on just more of a global approach to trying to reach our community. So it's not the deep dive that we want to do with the marketing firm, but we have implemented some new efforts this fall to try to reach them.
And one last question. The random survey sample that you did you have any identification elements about the demographics or the socioeconomic, any factors about the range that you
Yes, it's a good question. I received the data, we signed confidentiality agreements. I received the data of the parents from last calendar year, and some data you have on it on the file, and other ones we asked some demographic information.
Is it possible to share with the board afterwards, obviously not now, but just kind of what the breakdown of some of these numbers were as it relates to some of those different backgrounds? I think that would be interesting for us.
When you mean backgrounds, do you mean just percentages of how many are young and old? And what different...
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, do you mind if I did it now, or you don't want to waste the time, or whatever you want?
Okay.
I mean, I can give you a few just to give you, I don't have a lot.
Yeah, no, maybe 5 minutes or so, because I'm interested in actually parental educational level too. Did you get that information?
I think we do have that in your, yes, we do. We do have that. So
I think
I won't need
maybe
five.
just do a couple, but I do
I
want to see it in writing.
I won't, yeah. Well, you own all of this and you have to talk about it, so, yeah, I mean.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great. So, ethnically, 58%, and this is self-identified, 58% said they were Hispanic or Latino, 4% African American, 27% said Anglo or white, 3% said Asian Pacific Islander, 3% said some other ethnic or racial group, so it could be a combination, or 5% didn't feel comfortable to share that. In terms of grade level, and it's somewhat correlated with whether they chose to do the survey in Spanish or not. So that shouldn't be a surprise. I'm going to do
It's the grade level of the child?
no, you asked about the parent, correct? Yeah. Yes, thank you. Thanks very much for the clarification. So I'm going to do the math really quickly. 22% completed less than a high school education. 16% were high school graduates. And then you have some college, 18%, vocational business school, 7%, college graduates, 16%, and postgraduate professionals, 18%. So college plus, you have 34%. And then, you should...
That's, I think it's higher than our general demographic. Yeah, it is. We know that, I think I have more hands, so that's all. Okay.
Yeah, well, the thing that I do want to say is, and we tried to work with the district on this, these are really tough times for research because of the political climate. And some folks are not comfortable about giving information. They don't know what the deal is on the phone. The district was really great. We worked very closely with them to have them message families that have opted to always get language in Spanish to say, this is true, this is credible, you know, so we try to get people, but we're gonna miss people just by the mere fact. You know, we do, and I know you're being critical or anything, but I just wanted you to know it's a real challenge, and we want to be really protective of your parents and the children, so we have to be particularly sensitive to that. A couple other things. 43% were registered voters from looking at a March, looking from a match, and 80. This might not be surprising to you because it's very similar with healthcare, where women are the deciders. 85% of respondents were female. And the males were sort of less. They had some differences in gender based, and I think it's based on awareness, which was kind of interesting. In which women sort of rated things a little lower than some of the men on some of the items. And I suspect some of the men didn't really know. So, I guess as a man, I can tell you that.
Let the minutes reflect.
So does that help?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned about because my question wasn't meant to be critical. It's just
I did a
fantastic job. And
no, I appreciate it, but I really wanted to tell you like how hard we worked when we did the focus groups. We ended up, there were some of your staff members who really know the community really well, and they said, you know, the ones that they are sort of help in aid and stuff, these are not our parents. 8 out of 10 of them could have done this group in English, but they're bilingual, so they did it in Spanish. And that was a flag for me that some of the parents were reluctant, and so I think we captured some people because, thankfully, from the district, but I think we may have missed some people because of that.
And you did not stratify by ethnic group a priori, right? That just came. Breakdown.
We randomized the sample. We weighted on a couple of items. We weighted on district to make sure that it was proportional where they were. So we actually took your student file and then mapped it out to figure out where the district.
So by trustee.
Yeah, by trustee. Yes. Sorry, I misspoke. And then and we also weighted on the fact that 22% of your of the student parents request information in Spanish. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to make sure we had that target. So we weighted on those things. Because you don't have a lot of demographics about the parents, and you have some about the schools, and the number of kids percentage-wise by school was pretty good too. We weighted that. We just let it be random because I just did definitively know what it was.
I'm impressed. Actually, it speaks to the power of statistics because I do think that demographic breakdown is really reflective of our district.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, the fact that you got what you did is pretty representative. So.
One last question, let's throw this out there. You said 43% were registered voters.
Yeah.
That sample size relative to the rest, was there any noticeable differences in terms of perceptions?
Well, I can look if you want. My guess is something about the bond would probably be one of them, because the parents and not there. I don't know if there was maybe one or two parents in all the groups that even knew anything about a bond. That no clue. They want to know where you got the money, and why haven't you invested it yet? You know, you're saying you're going to invest it. Where's the proof? They wanted some elements.
I have to say that it was really interesting to hear when he asked the question about if you knew that the district had $400 million to spend on facilities in the district, what would you think of that? And the answer was, and we were witnesses of that, that's fake news. And I thought that was interesting.
Mr. Hunt?
Thank you, Ms. I think there's a couple of things that jump out, and just to what Maze was just saying, you know, if you look at the Casablanca land situation where some uninformed council members were saying, oh, they've had this money, they haven't done anything with it, they don't realize, and I think in fairness to them, they don't realize what we're going through, that Maze had to go get the bonds approved and get the new site, and we have to go through all of this, and DSA, and all that. So they haven't seen things coming out of the ground, the ones that know what's going on. And partly why Mr. Lee and I, just to report to you, have really been pushing our staff, Dr. Hanson included, to get up signs that, usually you have a construction sign, coming soon, McDonald's, whatever, but it can happen a lot quicker in the corporate private sector. So we just have, we want signs that are going up that say, your Measure O funds, and maybe we got to change it based on the ad work and the investment, but we will show what some of these first sections of projects are. If you did it, I know Mays has said, well, if you do it at Arlington, Tom, it's not going to break ground for a year and a half. In a way, I don't care. I just want them to know something's coming.
And I think, Tom, that's a really good question for the communications subcommittee, right? Is sort of when this messaging, because I think it's a critical piece.
Well, and I think it's good that you appointed Brent and I both the facilities and Brent and I both the communications, because here it goes hand in hand. And we have an oligarchy going on. So
Yeah, thank you.
Great. But we do think that's important. I also want to say that, and we talked about messaging, and I think Justin's got some good ideas there. But one of the things that really bothers me, a couple of things. One is the transfers. I mean, that is a majority of the questions we get as board members. And if someone asks for King, I almost just, in my head just go like this. And I've asked Tim, and we've had a debate on this, but I think we need to, when we talk about transfers, Dr. Hanson, even if it's historically, we need to tell the people, you know what, it's likely very difficult to get them into these following campuses. Historically, these campuses burst at the seams. Now, Tim's excuse is that I don't want people, we don't want to say it's closed when it's really not, and all that, but, it's just ludicrous. How many calls do I get from people who want to get their kid in King or Poly or Kennedy when you can't do that? So I think we need to be a little more transparent on that. And it really bothers me that our folks don't, particularly after council view, don't understand our commitment to safe campuses and to bullying, Dr. Hanson. And if we have to increase whatever the messaging or increase the on-campus programs where young people learn about not to bully and all that, if we have to do that, do it. Because there's nothing more important, I think, to a parent, and really in the way of the community, that is a safe campus. And lastly, and then the websites, we did talk about that in communication. And the problem is each campus has a different content, a different form, a different design, and importantly, it has varying degrees of someone that can manage the thing. Because usually it's some front office person that said, I'll do it, but he or she's got a lot on their hands. And we even talked about, can we get some of the high school programs that are into CTE to be involved and make that part of their project or something, but also to get some uniformity in that. And lastly, I'm surprised, Dr. Hanson, we have the biggest restaurant in town. We serve more meals than anybody else. We're very much abiding by the federal rules. In fact, we use an example. We need to get that story out because we are feeding an awful lot of people.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to something Trustee Hunt said regarding the transfer policy. And I've stated this before. I think it's very important that we treat this from a customer service perspective, not just about communicating about whether it's likely they'll get denied at a particular school site, but really promoting, using this as an opportunity to promote the programs at our other school sites and why they should consider that. I really just want to emphasize that I hope we can move that process forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
So I don't think we have any other questions. And board, I'd like to take a break, but we've got our consent agenda. Does somebody?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve in a second. Okay, Mrs. Alvin, do you? Aye. Okay. Consent approved. All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break and we'll come back for our action agenda. All right, next up is our action portion of our agenda. This is item J1, and this is the first time we get to hear about a district-wide language for the new mission statement, value statement, and motto. And Mrs. Kakish will be introducing this item, and we do have an action item associated with this. So, Mrs. Kakish.
I actually would like to turn it to Mr. Grayson so he can take us with just a 5-minute background presentation, and they ask from the board tonight.
Okay, thank you. So, as I stated earlier, we wanted to hop into our marketing update just to kind of quickly recap the things that we've done at the beginning of this school year when it comes to marketing and communications, and then go into the mission, values, and motto that we've had a board study session on, we've reviewed through our board subcommittee, we've had focused, we've tested some of these things through focus groups, and also had some district leadership come together and listen to these different items. This is a first reading of this, so if it's not agreed upon, we can go back and make some changes. So just a quick recap, there are two main reasons why we're embarking upon this marketing campaign. The first, of course, as you've heard all night, stem the tide of declining enrollment. That's one of our main focuses, and number two would be increasing and building our public confidence in RUSD. So that all goes hand in hand. It goes hand in hand with what we just heard from Richard. Some of the areas that we hope to really focus on this year, and areas that we've already actually focused on, printed materials, you'll see a little bit more of that coming up. Our social media, we did just hit 10,500 plus followers on Facebook. We were hitting 2,000 a couple years ago, so we are really growing in our social media area. And one ironic piece related to Richard's presentation earlier is that 84% of our Facebook followers are women as well. So that number is exactly hand in hand with what you just said. So billboards, I'll show you what we've done in terms of our digital kind of billboard marketing. Our website, I do have a quick little update. We started, one of the quick little quip about our website, one thing that we learned in our focus groups is that a lot of the community doesn't know that we changed our website over last year. So that, of course, means that they haven't visited in over a year. But we can understand that based on the way that the website looked before we changed it. People just turned off from it and didn't come back. So that does inform us that we need to kind of make more of an effort to inform people that the website has changed. And just an FYI, looking at our website analytics, we have 110,000 unique users who have visited our website just between July 1st and today. And we have 546,000 plus page views in that period of time. So people are going to our website. They're spending more than 2 minutes on our website, which is industry standard. So we're pretty proud of it, but we also know that we need to add more efforts to get people to know that our website is moving forward. Vehicle wraps, one of the things that we are talking about doing, just advertising our school district on the different maintenance vehicles and trash trucks that we have, and then some other TV and radio hits if we can get those done. Just a quick thing for the beginning of the school year, we had our Welcome Back campaign, letting all the parents and families know that we were starting school 2 weeks early. So these are just 3 times that we were in the press enterprise. All the way on the left is La Prensa newspaper, which is all in Spanish. One of the 2 on the right is the Sunday paper, and then one of the other ones is the Thursday paper. So we got great traction out of that. This was our kindergarten campaign. We did this because we were looking at numbers and we wanted to make sure that parents knew that the time was now to register your kids for kindergarten. The numbers looked a little bit low. We did this campaign on social media and got a lot of feedback from the community that allowed us to have kind of a back and forth dialogue, letting parents know when they could register, where they could register, what the age limits were, and all that kind of stuff. We're pretty proud of that. Continuing on, thanks to our communications team, Con, Mark, and Robert, just really hammering all social media. The one on the left is the Instagram post, the one in the middle is a Facebook post, and the one on the left is the right is also a Facebook post. And those 2 Facebook posts reached more than 8,000 people, just to, kind of again hammering that we were back to school a little bit earlier this year. Thank you to Richard Prince and his large Rolodex. He was able to call some people down to the city and get our welcome back message on the billboard on the 91, right over by the auto center. And I believe it was up for about 2 weeks free of charge. So 8-second hits every minute or so, where we had our cute kids up there on a billboard. And thanks to Nick for the design on that. So getting into the mission, vision, the mission, values, and the motto. I started here with the motto because I wanted to present something to the board that came up during our board subcommittee. The motto that was recommended through our sessions with Sam, and we kind of all looked at some language, building extraordinary futures together. We did poll that, we did do some testing of that at the focus group, and the community overwhelmingly did like that as a message. As we started playing around with it and our graphic designer started using it, we did feel like it was a little bit wordy when it comes to putting this logo everywhere. You know, it used to be innovation in education, which is 3 words. When it came to putting it together, it did seem a little bit long. However, I do want to point out that what we just learned from Richard Bernard in his presentation was that the piece that was I think one of the highest numbers, he had 90%, more than 90% thought it was, they agreed that it's important that teachers, principals, counselors, the district, and me as a parent work together to ensure my child's success. So that's a strong vote for the top one, for the Building Extraordinary Futures Together. Part of the reason why this Be Extraordinary campaign came out, we love the word extraordinary. Be Extraordinary is much shorter. When Nick designed this, we thought it looked great. It has really great kind of t-shirt value, right? It would look great on a shirt, it would look great on documents. It's a little bit shorter. And we think that it really also speaks, it conveys a mission to everyone in the district, children, parents, teachers, administrators, and all, to be extraordinary. So this is one where you do have the choice, and we don't have to, again, we don't have to vote on this today. The board subcommittee did express interest in the second one, in the Be Extraordinary theme, but I think also based on what we learned tonight about building futures together, you know, I think that's something to consider. So I'll go past this, and then at the end we can kind of come back to it unless somebody wants to chime in now. I will go. Yeah, we'll come back to it. Okay. The recommended RUSD mission, also this was put together by Mr. Sam Seidel, who came in from Stanford and led that first board subcommittee, the study session. And Richard and I spent some time just kind of wordsmithing and adding commas and periods where they needed to be. But I'll read it out loud. The mission of Riverside Unified School District is to provide engaging, innovative, and equitable learning experiences for all students every day. There were some areas where I think we moved some words around as a group, but we're pretty happy with where this landed. And keep in mind, the mission statement is not meant to be a short, kind of like a motto. The mission statement is what we live by, what we want our staff and everyone to be able to recite when we say, what is the mission, and why do we do what we do every day. And then moving forward, there are, I would say 6, maybe 7 values that we agreed upon that the district would stand by. These would be on the website, and whenever someone came to the website and wanted to know what we were all about and went to the About Us page, this is what they would see. I'll take the board's direction on how we should go through these. Would you like, I know that you've all seen these before, is there any that I need to stop on? Do you want me to, there's a few areas where I may have a small recommendation of changes, but we, shall I read them out loud, or do you want to?
If you're reading out loud,
All right. So RUSD values well-being. We aim to cultivate graduates who not only succeed academically, but are also physically and mentally healthy and are active and engaged citizens. The district strives to create safe and multidimensional educational environments that support students' development as well-rounded individuals.
Why do you need to say we aim?
Sorry?
Why do you need to say we aim?
So I think that conversation, we spent a little bit of time talking about what promises we make versus, I mean, there's words that I think convey that this is what we are working toward. We threw around words like RUSD will, RUSD works to, RUSD aims. I think that one we landed on aim, but it's not, again, it's not a set in stone.
If it's a value, it's something that we're in the act of doing, as opposed to, I feel like aim is kind of detracts from that a little bit.
You're still not there when you're aiming.
Sure.
why didn't you just stick with people?
Yeah, I like that. Got it.
Yeah, that's an active thinking. It's proactive.
I think you guys make great points, and if you, as we move on to the other ones, I think they are all very convincing in the language. That one does feel like it was a little bit of a, like we were taking it out on this one. So I'll move on to the next one. RUSD values equity. RUSD is committed to implementing inclusive practices and policies that honor the rich diversity of our district and the greater region. With a focus on high outcomes for all, we will work diligently to ensure all students have their needs met, strengths fostered, and graduate prepared for success. The only...
Sorry, that should be an agreement with the tense of the other one. It should probably say, we connect.
So there was some feedback that said, that I think at first all of them began with RUSD is committed to, and there was some feedback that said that it was too repetitive. So we kind of tried to mix it up a little bit, but if...
No, I was just saying, if the other
Oh,
one,
I see what you
we cultivate,
I see.
we
So
can
we
maybe
are
say,
committed.
we are committed. You're mixing the tenses, or should we commit?
Okay,
Are you-
I see what you mean.
That's
Got it. The only change that as a team we looked at was the word high outcomes. That's something I can maybe run by our academic leaders, and we just wondered if that's appropriate, the word high outcomes, or is it solid or substantial outcomes or something like that. So it's just a small word that we wanted to revisit. All right. Next, RUSD values excellence. We value lifelong learning, personal integrity, achievement, and accomplishment. RUSD seeks to inspire and empower students to reach their highest potential. Period.
another one. I think you could say RUSD inspires and empowers students.
I appreciate it. Inspires and
Empowers, just, you're not seeking, it's to Mr. Hunt's comment about you seek, but you're aiming,
Yeah.
you want to be more.
Great.
I don't want to speak for the whole board, don't you?
No, Amy and Seeks and UCLA's football coach said this week, we are aspire to beat Fresno State. And all of us Bruins, what the hell you aspiring? You mean, what is that? Go beat them. And it's the same thing here. You seek and you aim. Just tell us what you're doing. You're doing it right. Dr. Hanson, his team, and this board are doing it right.
Trustee Hunt, the difference is UCLA can only aspire to be.
How was that Texas game? How'd that go?
I'm going to move on to the next slide. RUSD values innovation. Chip Kelly. RUSD will be future-oriented in the design of its schools and educational programs. Personalization, creativity, and technology integration are central to the district's approach to preparing students for an increasingly fast-paced and ever-changing world.
You can take out
You
no
want to
bait.
take this one off? It's RUSD is.
Got it.
It's today, not tomorrow.
Anybody else can chime in?
No, this is great feedback.
Where's Mrs. Alley to really
Mrs.
count
Alley.
based?
Well, I think they're all a little too fluffy. And I'd like to go back to, if you would.
There is one. Did you want me to finish the
I'm
last
sorry.
one before we?
Sure
Yeah,
enough.
Sorry. Just
Sure
one
enough.
more.
Go ahead.
Unless you want me to stop there.
No, go ahead,
Just one-
finish it,
okay.
then we'll come back. and then we'll-
All right. So the last one is RUSD values community. Strategic connections with local partners are core to the success of our district. We work diligently to build bridges between our schools and community in order to create rich learning experiences and opportunities for all.
Oh, sorry.
Can I say something about this briefly?
Yeah.
Is that complimented me a moment ago on the coaches thing, and what Kai and y'all have come up with this 3 C's about being involved with the community, integrity. I think we need to, going back to the gentleman proposed us, but making sure that people see RUSD as an integral part of their community. I'd like to have a little bit more of that work done in here, that we recognize that our staff, our faculty, and particularly our students are part of the future of the community, and we're imparting upon them it's way too long, but you know what I'm saying, is the understanding, the responsibility of being people of integrity, and valuing community. Just somehow, if you look at the coaches clinic, the 3 Cs, bringing some of that in, just my thought. So.
Sure. Good point. I'm going back to the motto for a minute. So I didn't like Be Extraordinary. It reminded me of Melania Trump's Be Best. You know, isn't that her thing right now? Be best, which I thought was crazy. To be is a kind of passive thing. Be, we all being. But building is a really strong thing that we're working together as a group to do. And so I liked building extraordinary futures together. I thought that made a lot of sense. Yes, it looks wordy here because of the way you've set it up, but I think you could graphically set it up a little differently. And as far as the mission goes, it's okay. I don't dislike it. I don't know, do we have to say the mission of Riverside is? Can't we just say Riverside, again, going back to Mrs. Lock-Dawson's point, Riverside Unified School District will provide engaging, innovative, and equitable learning.
Or just provides.
Take it all that.
Provides engaging, innovative, and equitable learning.
Yeah. And I don't know if we need to say the mission. And as far as all the other points go, it all sounds great, but people will, I mean, this is like so much fluff for the brain, and people don't read this with any kind of integrity. The only way you're going to get people, if they do stumble upon this page, is something quick and easy and pointed. I think these are too wordy to be read by most people. I think they'll turn off.
I think the committee concurred, by the way, that we did like being extraordinary, but after hearing the presentation, I think Mr. Grace has made a great point about the physicality, building it together. But yeah, that they're not, I think people just read over them. They just don't grab you. What was the latest Nikes?
Yeah, their motto is just do it, of course, but their mission is something like to inspire athletes around the world to be the greatest version of themselves.
You'll read it's not too long, doesn't take too much of your time, and it gets right to it. I think there's an awful lot of comments, is my point.
Can I ask, and did the committee talk about this, and Mr. Grayson, did you talk of why each of those values needed any kind of explanation whatsoever? And where would that go? Like, could they just be bullet points? Well-being, innovation, whatever.
So absolutely.
Can you speak to that?
Yep, I'm trying to recall, but I believe when we had our study session where we really dug deep into these, we did say that, so first, we looked at the mission. These all include the words that Sam kind of pulled out from his conversation with all of you. And I remember, I mean, I couldn't be mistaken, but I remember this being kind of his version of all of those things when it comes to the mission. When it comes to the values, it absolutely can. They could even be, it could be one sentence, RUSD values these things, but each of them you could click on or hover over, and it includes an explanation of why we value them.
Yeah.
So it's not, again, I think you had it right. People don't necessarily come to our page to find these, but if they stumble upon them, and I think the values especially, they work for people who are thinking about coming to RUSD, but also a lot of the mission and values speak to the people that already work for RUSD. And when we think about the why, as Dr. Hans talks about, when we wake up in the morning, what are we coming to do, and the values that we should embody, I think these are things that we can use for internal communications. But I think the reason that they're long is just so that they are thorough and they explain more about why we chose them as values.
So the intent was to have these on the web page, but where else are we thinking we're going to have these?
Honestly, I think it's, if there are some things that we do with leadership, internal type of things, I think the long explanations are more just for explanation. When we talk about our values, though, I think it's just...
Yeah, I mean, the reason I was asking is, I don't know, because I do like the idea of having you hover over it and have it pop up as a pop-up, what the explanation is. But I like, having the mission and then the 6 values, where they're just bullet pointed the words. But then the question is, like, if you have it in print media, what do? You put all the words in there.
Right.
So, but I do like the idea of on our webpage just having it, and I'd like to hear from the other board members if they feel that way too.
I just think that the very nature of what a value is needs to be self-explanatory. I don't think that it's necessary to have any wording on it. It's just completely superfluous.
So what are they coming up with? Equity?
So, so well-being, equity, excellence, innovation, community. That's right.
Are those good? So those are those topics.
I feel like if they're,
I think this helps if someone says, well, what does the district mean by innovation, right? We had a good conversation about innovation. When people hear the word innovation, they think of one-to-one devices, they think of technology, right? But to go back to the innovation slide, we're really intentional to say that it's about the future-oriented in the design of the schools and the education programs, right? Innovation is not just about technology, but it's about being prepared for the changing of the world in many different ways. And so that's an area where this explanation could be useful, right? Because people might think, well, if you said you're innovative, why don't you guys have all of your classrooms are digital and they're all on the computer? Well, we don't mean that it's all about technology. We mean that we're changing with the world and with our programs and things like that.
See, I don't think a one-to-one devices is innovation. I don't. Honestly, I don't think most people I know would. So
I'm sorry, I use that as an example, but just
no, but I don't. You know, and I don't. To Dr. Farouk's point, I think it is self-explanatory. So perhaps the word innovation, it captures a range of value, a range of definitions within our own organization, and let that speak to the individual who's reading it.
Because the converse to that is that even whatever we're writing is not inclusive of everything. And so, because these are the idea of a value is something that has a lot of different range of qualities to it. So that's another thing to consider.
I like the 5.
You like the what, Mrs. Walker?
I just like the 5 of them without any explanation.
I don't mind that, and I don't mind that explanations being down below or something. I was just saying, I assume you hover would come up, but I think it's true. We're all people that have run for office. We don't, if you put a lot on here, they just talk.
It's more, yeah.
So you just need to do bullet points, I'll go down below and explain it, but that's really, it's the elevator speech.
Sure.
Unless it's a real long run.
Do you think, does the board like the 5 words? No, you don't. Dr. Burke does not?
No.
Oh, you do? Okay. So they're, again, right, they're well-being, equity, excellence, innovation, and community. I think those are pretty self-explanatory. They speak to what we're about.
What do you think, Mr. Sosa? Put you on the spot
Sure.
here.
Is that your district?
I agree that keeping them more open to interpretation might be better because, as Dr. Farouk was saying, the converse of that is limiting what we say our values are. So if we feel the need to define them, it means that they don't encompass what you might think. They only encompass the things that we're enumerating right here. So by leaving them more open, it allows us to relate to more people. That's my input.
Good answer, Mr. Sosa. Good answer.
See, our education system works.
Yes, sir.
It's innovative, it's well-being,
This is only first reading.
Correct.
Okay.
So we can go back.
We can go back.
I have a question. So, based on the survey research and Trustee Allaby's comments, I'm curious what Richard's opinion about the motto is. I don't know if you
We actually asked about that. We had 2 that we were testing. One was building extraordinary futures together. The other one was creating extraordinary futures together. And I'm going to read you, this is from the focus group report, which you don't have, but ultimately will have. the motto "Building Extraordinary Futures Together" were preferred by a majority of parents across different groups, although there was no distinct reason why. They kind of liked the other one, but not as much. And this is, again, focus group, so it's not quantitative in nature. Some parents mentioned that building insinuated there was a foundation that was being brought up from the bottom. They wanted the motto to show that that there would be joint effort to build something together. In contrast, parents who preferred creating extraordinary futures together indicated that building meant that there was already a set formula or plan that may not fit with everyone. For those parents, creating implies more flexibility or personalization to individual needs, which they believe is more important. Overall, several participants mentioned that both mottos sounded good to them, or they didn't have a real preference.
What about between be extraordinary and the building?
We didn't test it, but to speak to it from the data,
right?
I mean, I kind of like it because it's super short, and when you mentioned several times, like the Nike, just do it. It's short, to the point. But your strongest, as Justin mentioned, your strongest item was, it's this team. It's coming together to do this. And I kind of like that. So, I mean, I'm not a tester, I'm not necessarily a marketer in that true respect, but I would give this to a marketing firm and say, let's see how visually it would look. How do you get it so it looks appealing, it doesn't seem long-winded? Maybe that's, maybe if we saw it in a different way.
But it couldn't potentially, from a campaign perspective, like a marketing campaign, it could just be an easy variation for specific.
I thought it would be good to have an overall, that larger one, and then for certain things.
That's what I mean.
And that was what I told Justin. I think you can use both of them, but I would probably lead with the larger one.
And just to add to that, that was the plan. If we went with the longer tag and motto, that we would use "Be Extraordinary," as we used them to start off the school year with our staff, but something that we could use as a campaign. This could go if we start an anti-bullying campaign, or if we start some other kind of excellence campaigns around the district. "Be Extraordinary" can be the thing that, again, looks great on the shirt, looks great on posters, and you can use it for a lot of different reasons. I think kids would. Boys and Girls Club's motto is "Be Great," right? I think young people would really kind of all join in with this "Be Extraordinary" campaign. So it can be a campaign, doesn't have to. It can be a sub-brand of the Building Extraordinary Futures Together. Any other questions?
What specifically? I know it's the first read. So what specifically are we taking a potential action on? Is it? It says here just option between those two mottos and then that language. Is that what?
Right. So if the board agreed upon a certain motto, we could say that at least that is set in stone. We can move forward with that.
So let me see if I heard the board and summarize what I heard is that we like the big motto sentence, and that doesn't limit us from using "Be Extraordinary" in our campaign, but that would be our motto, is the Building Extraordinary Future. So if we agree with that, then that would be what we would go for. As far as the values, I heard the board saying use the titles, and the titles need to speak to everybody as they see what that word means for them, and not limit it to what our definition of that, and make it not as flexible. If that is what the majority of the board agrees to, we also can move with that and actually take an action as amended and move forward, unless you need different drafts.
Go ahead. I was thinking of the Nike about making athletes. It talks about their client athletes. I'm a little concerned about the futures. I'm not sure what that whose future. Hanson's on the boards, but it's. I'm not sure building extraordinary students together is what it is, but somehow I think we need to talk about our product.
So Nike says just do it.
No, that's their, I know, yes.
And that's the motto. That's what we're asking here for the motto, and then the mission is different. The
How about just brand?
no, the mission is the next one. Can you go to the mission?
Yeah.
Because the mission is what you're talking about, that they talk about inspire their athletes, and that's where we, as Riverside, we talk about our students. So if that can answer the question, I'm not sure. I'm just...
Okay, thank you. That's a good point.
I think one of the things I would like to know is if you're going to use Be Extraordinary, I had the same question about Be Extraordinary. Who's supposed to be extraordinary? Is it me? Is it the board? Is it the teachers? Is it the students? So I had a similar question. So a lot of this depends on how you use these things and where you use them, and for that I leave it in your capable hands. But you know, if we end up using Be Extraordinary to the exclusion of the other because it's less wordy, then I don't want to go there. You know, I want to say what we really are about.
The thing I like about, because the term futures to me, being a school district, it obviously connotates the children, the students, and so I think that to me is clear. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think that I don't I don't know. I think it works. I mean, to me. They're building extraordinary futures together. That's what I was going to say, is that it's really, it's about the institution. And the institution has to mean that we're not just talking about, obviously we're talking foremost about the students. I think this is the nature, especially that's what future connotates to me. But it should be an institutional excellence, an institutional brand. And the other point I just want to make is that Trustee Lee, he's already gotten input from the communications subcommittee, and he's already had perspective on this. I just want to...
Yeah, when I met with Trustee Lee last week, he did tend to lean towards the Be Extraordinary, simple, short, very similar to the Just Do It. But yeah,
Well, bring it back. It's only the first reading.
We'll bring it back, and I just want to remind us all, because this goes back to January UCR. Back in January UCR 2018, when we had the old values and the old motto and the old mission, it was we need to update it. And so all the work that we did with Sam, I don't want us to forget that was valuable work. I think when he left that night, we all felt pretty good about the mission, a little more wordy, but it was defined. You all felt good about those values because you updated these values from what was January of 18 that we looked at. So we have the values. But I hear us now just worrying about the definitions and kind of the optics, the look of all this. And we have a marketing team that can help us do that. But I would concur with what Mrs. Key says. If we're good with the mission, let's move forward. If we're good with these 5 values, let's move forward. If you recall, one of the last time we had the study group when Sam was here, one of the ideas was just describing RUSD by those terms. And we pumped the brakes on that. We said we need more than just those terms, and so hence was born the mission. We want to be more little wordy and explain them, and so that's why the mission came back. But those 5 terms, and Sam at the very end said, these really are values. And so RUSD is innovative, it's community, it's equity, but let's put a little bit more definitions and meat behind that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is before we move forward, we want the board to feel comfortable because a marketing campaign is going to be next. And when we market, are these our values? Is this our mission? Is this our tagline? That's what we're striving hard to get from staff or from the board, whether it's this first or second reading, so we can move forward with the marketing campaign and not change. And then we're going to run with these values and this model, this mission for quite some time before a future board might decide to update it and change and do those kind of things.
Mrs. Always looking dubious over there. Are you? I'm kind of good with Mrs. Kakisha's recommendation. I'm good with these, and I like the values. I don't like all the words associated with the values. But I wanted to really quickly go back to what Mr. Hunt said about being confused about whose future, who's building. I don't have an issue with that because just like the Nike thing, just do it. Who's doing it? Is it you? Is it Nike? Is it, So I kind of think it's kind of okay in that sense. But I think the question is, if you are super uncomfortable with it, Mrs. Alvey, and if we do bring it back, what do you want to see if it comes back? What would you like to see?
No, I like the building extraordinary futures together.
Okay.
I thought I made that clear.
The 5 values?
I like the 5 values. I think the mission statement can be reworded to be clearer.
Okay.
It feels a little, the mission of the Riverside Unified School District.
So if we bring it back, what would you like to see?
I'd like to see a cleaned up mission statement, and if we are going to ever use Be Extraordinary, I'd want to have specific ways that was going to be used.
Okay.
As opposed to just deciding to suddenly put it on all of our vans. And suddenly that becomes our motto. So, it just depends on how you're going to use it, as I said.
So
I think the T-shirts are great.
So perhaps when it comes back, we have a little bit more information about where this information is going to go and how it's going to be used.
I would suggest that we just make the approval of our motto to be the top statement and move with that. And that way our staff very seldomly will use the Be Extraordinary unless they're informal. That would be how you can guarantee that doesn't get used in to me, that would be the direction I would recommend.
You could decide when to use it.
No, I'm asking because it's a majority of the board, yeah.
I think you can use either one of them, actually. And I think to explain it, there needs to be a sub-campaign that says extraordinary students, extraordinary learning, extraordinary camp, whatever. But in either one of them will work that way. I think you just leave it up there. And that's why Brent and I thought the second one could work, despite Mrs. Trump's agreement. But
I'll pipe up and I say I like the second one better too. I like the Be Extraordinary. It's punchy. But
I think you just
to your
mix
point,
there,
I get it.
And then you can say extraordinary this and extraordinary that. And I think extraordinary learning, extraordinary teachers, extraordinary staff, whatever.
So can I just jump in here?
I just want to say one, and then I'm going to turn it to you. I really recommend that we come up with a motto, because if our motto is going to be 2 statements, it's going to be confusing. And if our motto is going to be marketed, we need to implement it and hammer it into the community as our motto so it can be a brand. And if you feel strongly about Be Extraordinary, let's do that. If you feel strongly about the first one, let's do that. Because I really am worried about us having certain marketing campaign materials, and we would spend thousands of dollars on, and it could be a concern to the board. And I can come up with a protocol to when are we going to use this, and then I can't control 4,000 employees, and something will come up. So I'm just saying that our motto should be one motto.
I agree with that. And I'm not a marketing professional. I mean, communications is where we do a lot of different things, but I would go out on a limb and say that if we chose a modern, innovative marketing company, that they would like the bottom one just because of its ability to be remembered easily, ability to be read on a side of a truck as you drive past and not have to read, for too long, the ability for it to be on a billboard and you drive by and you immediately get the message. I'm not advocating for it, I'm just telling you that I believe from a marketing, kind of a 2018 modern marketing perspective, and things change. This isn't a slight, or I'm not saying that, I'm saying things change every other year when it comes to marketing and how things are marketed. So right now, the 2 words or the very short slogans are what are in. I think so what Maze was saying was absolutely correct. We do need to choose one. The great thing about the 2 of these is that they play off of each other in a way that building extraordinary, first of all, they both include the word extraordinary. The first one even begins with the word be, building, right? So we could use, if we do end up choosing building extraordinary futures together, I think the Be Extraordinary campaign, we would do a great job at differentiating the 2, right? We would probably even take off RUSD. We wouldn't make it look like it was a slogan of RUSD. And we can also go back and consult marketing professionals and say, hey, which one do you think works better? We just, we hope to get something sooner rather than later, but of course we want the board to completely buy into what we do.
I don't know if Mays was, if you're asking us to make a decision tonight, but I would ask that we wouldn't until Mr. Lee is back here. Mr. Lee and I were very much in favor of be extraordinary. Mrs. Elevates some of her observations here. I mean, thinking again, but out of the five of us, may I point out that Mr. Lee spends more time marketing and deciding how to market and how to get people to use his card versus anyone else, and how he puts properties out there. So I think Mr. Lee can add a lot. Can we have this, President, can we put this on the next agenda just to revisit it? Is that okay with everyone else?
It's just a first.
My only comment is I think it's very obvious that from a marketing standpoint, that Be Extraordinary is just objectively more marketable, period. No, but my point is that I think the only reason why I would even consider the other option is because it was from the research and the polling and the parents themselves, that was the number one thing that they wanted to see in the district about working together and so forth. And I'm not saying that's the reason we should do this. I'm just saying, to me, if our judgment is based on what's going to be the most marketing, then I just think there's two very different, distinct answers here.
And I concur, but I do think on the second one, if you use that as your core model, then you can build off it a lot. And just look at the first one. What do you mean by extraordinary? Well, we're building extraordinary futures together. And extraordinary sports teams, I don't know, everything, extraordinary teachers, extraordinary staff. I just think you can use the second one more effectively in more ways where you're sort of pinned in by the building and together on the others. You can be extraordinary together. You know, but I do firmly believe that since we're going to live with this tattoo for a while, then we need to have Mr. Lee here. And even though he did, we both were in favor of being extraordinary, but I think Mrs. Alves brought some great comments. I didn't have the, as you say, Dr. Farouk didn't have that building together. So I would like to have this brought back. Maybe the notes from this just summarized, and so Mr. Lee can sort of hear what we talked about here. I still lean towards the second, but I think it'd be important.
Just also want to point out that there was language in the the mission that we removed. There was language in there that said RUSD works collaboratively to provide. I don't know if you remember that, but we did spend some time, because we knew that working collaboratively before we got this research data, we knew that collaboration with the community was a huge point of emphasis for our community. So we did have in there language that said RUSD works collaboratively or works together with the community. That is another option that we can go back and potentially add the collaboration piece to the, if the board chose Be Extraordinary, we could add collaboration to the mission.
So I think what I'm struggling with here is we just spent a bunch of money doing focus groups and having people together, and we tested something different than this. And now we don't know.
You're referring to the motto.
Yeah, the motto. And we tested creating versus building, which is.
So we tested both.
Both of these?
No, sorry. We tested creating and building just to see which one rose to the top.
But you didn't test B.
I'll give you an anecdote on why Be Extraordinary rose to the top. So Lynn and I sat down and started talking about how to kick off the school year with our staff. We came up with this Be Extraordinary campaign because we already loved the word extraordinary. And it took off among our internal staff to the point where I had to send out an email asking people to stop using it so much because it was very, very popular. And as our team internally started looking at it and kind of saw the value in it, it did rise to the top. We asked the board subcommittee to look at it, and we asked them if it was okay if we put it on this agenda to bring to you all, to say we like it as a department. We would, I think that at least the three of us, we haven't talked about it with Mark and Khan, but at least between Richard, Nick, and myself, we talked about we would choose that. I would tattoo it.
Okay. But my point is that's all fine and good, and it's not a criticism. I wasn't criticizing you about not testing it. But here we're talking about choosing between two things and saying, well, we should choose the top one because our survey said that this, so we're assuming based on what those surveys said that this would play better, but we don't know that. We don't know that. So, I mean, I don't know if there's a, if there's another way to go back to your focus groups. I mean, it doesn't seem, I think it's going to be more money, but if it is truly a tattoo that you're going to have to live with and you're making assumptions on faulty information, I don't know.
And that's exactly the reason why I'd like a decision, because if we keep both, you could have people using it creatively, and if that's not what the board would like to see, that's why the direction is really important.
If you like them both, you can use them both. There's nothing that says we can't use both. There's nothing wrong with either of these statements, per se. I mean, it just depends on what you're trying to get across, right? One sounds definitely more formal. One's a little more informal. I don't know. Maybe there's nothing wrong with using them both. Maybe the word extraordinary is what ties them together, and maybe you put the top motto on your letterhead and the bottom motto on your T-shirts. But I don't see a problem with having two similarly linked things. But bring it back. Just bring it back.
We'll bring it back with the full
Sounds
board.
good. I don't know if there's any way even to do an unscientific survey, a survey monkey or something,
I think we'll
to look at what, just
how
to
we
see.
can test these two and see what.
Yeah, just because we're making all kinds of assumptions about what the community wanted based on some other data, and we haven't tested these two. So if we're going to be scientific about it, we might as well. Anyway, okay, so it's going to come back.
I think my
Fabulous.
5 minutes is up.
Listen, you know what? This is fantastic.
No, I appreciate all
It
the
is
feedback.
really good. It is so much farther along than we were before. I'm going to give it to the team in communications for taking this on.
Thank you all so
Thank
much.
you.
The feedback is really good.
We will get there. We're like this close.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I was off to the bottom.
Mr. Hunt, do you know anybody who does a tattoo removal service? Just
Haven't needed it.
all right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for that. I know it's tough, but I like where it's going. So next up, we're going to talk about Ramona High School and the theater naming.
That's good.
This has also gone to the naming committee, correct? And what other committees has it gone to?
It's actually at the facility.
No, it didn't go to the naming committee.
Oh, I guess it went before when we said we
The
were
Maxine
going to.
Frost
Okay.
designation name.
Mr.
That's,
Cameron.
that's correct. The Maxine Frost name went to the naming committee, and then in April it went to the rest of the board. Now
No,
we're getting ready to.
we did not choose what we were naming the theater. We just thought it was a good idea to have her designation on the theater. So we didn't come up with if you'll remember, we specifically said what we come up with has to be decided by the full board, right?
That is absolutely correct, and that's why we're here tonight to make a decision or have consensus on two specific items. One is on the building itself. We have two options: Maxine Frost Performing Arts Center or Maxine Frost Theater. The second item is on the actual dedication of the building, which is newly renovated. This was done in December. We have a dedication plaque. Excuse me. And this where you have two options presented tonight: Ramona High School Performing Arts Center or Ramona High School Theater. So we're looking for consensus from the board so that we can start working and developing the lettering and what comes with the exterior of the church.
So I may be the only person who feels this way, and then you can all vote differently. You're right? Okay. I don't understand why we're putting the dedication plaque with a different name than the building name. So that's to start off with. But if you look at the information that was presented to us tonight, one of the things they talked about was that people perceive that their schools aren't equal. So what I'm going to tell you is that all the other schools are going to be theater, and we're going to have one performing arts center. What worries me is a couple things. First of all, you're elevating one theater to a performing arts center, making it sound grander, even though it is our newest theater. You're somehow imbuing with it what goes on in the theater, as if what goes on in the Ramona Theater is better than what goes on in the King Theater, the Poly Theater, and that's not the case. And my other problem is that for 60 years it's been the Ramona Theater. So my feeling was, oh, I have another point too. The Fox is the Performing Arts Center, but no one calls it the Fox Performing Arts Center. Most people call it the Fox Theater. Why? Because it's been the Fox Theater forever, right? So I'm afraid that those three reasons are why I'd prefer to see it as the Maxine Frost Theater. But I am willing to go with the group on this, because this is not a hill I'm wishing to die on. So if you all feel differently than I do, there it goes.
So what if we don't have a hang up about the other schools if they wanted to change their name from theater to performing arts?
Oh, come on, and all the signs?
No, I'm just saying if they I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying that if something we don't make exclusive to the school, that this is what the school and the community wants, that we make that something that's exclusive to Ramona. I don't know if that has any bearing on the thing, but it's
Offer it, even if they take it out.
well, and we don't even have to actively offer it. I'm just saying that if others felt that sense of disparity that we're able to brand it at one school site, that we wouldn't object to those other school sites doing the same thing. I don't know.
And changing all the signs? I don't think so. And that sign for Poly really was expensive. I want you to know that, because I was around when we put that up, that banner.
The paint on the
Little
sign
Earth.
was expensive.
Little Earth.
Not the exterior sign.
Yeah. Little Earth.
Not the exterior, the interior was expensive.
No, that exterior was also expensive.
Isn't that just paint?
No, they're letters.
Well,
Mr. Hunt, you had a comment.
Yes, I think Mrs. Alvey makes some excellent points, but I think when the Fox Theater was no longer a theater, which was for movies, and it became a multi-purpose arts, that's when they changed it to performing arts. And I do think Mrs. Alvey's right that everything else is theater, but one of the reasons, if you recall, the reason we decided to put the last bit of Measure B plus some extra money we loaned ourselves from Measure O if it passed into this is because this really is the theater. We could never build a theater like this again, a performing arts center. We could never build it again. Our architects tell us that. And we know that under the Civic Center Act, we that are involved in other things in the arts, whether they're children, or Mrs. Alvey and I both been on the ballet board, et cetera, Bob Dawson as well, that it is where the community's going to go. So it's going to be more, I think performing arts just gives it a more variety of what can be there. It does elevate it some. Mrs. Alvey's right, maybe the others will have MD over it. I don't care if they change it either. But I do think performing arts is a better, more appropriate name. It does have a little more cachet. And I do recognize it maybe makes others feel inferior. I'm not against them changing it if they want. I'd like to see this be the Performing Arts Center. And I think that's what, without putting a good principle, I think that's what Ramona had talked about as well. The Ramona faculty, So, or we flip a coin.
So you guys can arm wrestle. Here's the thing. I'm a little bit like you. I'm a little bit, well, you probably feel stronger about this, more strongly about it than I do. But the only reason I would think Performing Arts Center is okay for this is just because it is our biggest theater in the district, and the community is going to come there, and they're going to do different things. So I think it's different than Art Littleworth and the King Theater, and it's a little bit different because I think it serves a different purpose. So that's, in a way, I think maybe it does need a different name because of that, because it's a different purpose. Just to make it stand out.
I really am okay with that. I mean, I will go along with you for all if you want to say Performing Arts Center. but just wanted you to know how I felt.
I think you made some great points.
And it just, something came up in the marketing thing too, that was, it was in style, right? Saying that the pithy, the extraordinary is in style. The performing arts thing is in style.
In style.
Fancy, right? It's like people love it. So, it'll probably be out in a few years anyway, but,
So why can't we have the construction dedication plaque also say the Maxine Frost Performing Arts Center?
So with
Absolutely.
with the plaque, the plaque is the dedication of the construction when the building was dedicated, or it was a grand opening, which was back in December 2017. It could have both names, but typically you have the plaque separate. The plaque will remain for the life of the building, while the name can change in 10, 20 years. So it doesn't mean that we can change the plaque too, but it's just that we bring it to your attention since we're ordering the plaque, which may look something like this. But again, if the board takes action tonight, we can also name it the Maxine Frost Performing Arts Center in the plaque and on the lettering of the building.
I forgot about this part. I think it should be the Maxine Frost Performing Arts Center if it need to be at Ramona High School or something. You can't have two different names for performing arts. Why would you have Maxine? Why would you honor Maxine and all that? It's obviously it's at Ramona. We're at Ramona. Art Littleworth is at Poly. I just think you should say Maxine Frost Performing Arts Center, period. If you want to add Ramona down there somewhere, I don't care, but I don't think anybody's not going to know it's not at Ramona when they're there and looking at that plaque. So it should just be found.
The only reason why this didn't have a name at that time because the decision for Maxine Frost happened after December 7th.
But we're ordering the plaque now. That was a temporary plaque that we put up. And also, by the way, your committee said that should be, because when this started out, this Performing Arts Center, the money, I think Mrs. Allaby might have been president, and I was president. And so I don't want the president, who, all respect Mrs. Lock Dawson, but now, or Mr. Lee last year. So we're just suggesting this board, you just do it in alphabetical order. And then Dr. Hanson, just want you to see that as well.
I want my picture.
When I put the picture back on, we had the picture.
Could I also add another thing? I know you're getting there, so I'm going to just jump to the picture where you've got the names twice on the side of the building, and I think that's excessive. That would be 3 times that you would put on the building Maxine Frost Performing Arts Center, and I think that's excessive. So I think we pick and choose here.
I think you put it, to me, I'm sorry, can I talk about it?
Yes.
I think you do it in the front, go back, Mr. Thank you. As long as it doesn't get in the way of the home of the Rams, I learned my lesson. You put right there on that facade, or that, whatever, Maxine Frost Performing Arts Center. And then, obviously, home of the Rams might give it away that we're at home. So.
I'm the physical, sorry.
Yeah, the intent was never to have them in 3 locations. It was just options of just to show where they would.
I like the idea of having it in the front and one on the side. I like it way up there though. What do you guys think? Unless on the bottom one was like enormous. If it was really huge, like the Art Littleworth is huge.
It's too huge.
So I think having it. I think one or the other. What do you guys like?
Put one up the top and
No, I don't want 2 on that side of the building.
No, I'm saying just have the red brick and have the one in the front. That's it. Leave the ADA corridor alone.
Yeah. Do you like the brick or? What do you guys
I like whatever. I think you can. Pardon me for that. I think you can see the brick very well from the street, and I think being higher up is majestic myself. I just don't like it on the ADA. Plus, we have the ADA windows. Mrs. Allaby's come up with a musical score. There's an actual musical score.
Miss Guzzi came up with that.
Well, she wasn't supposed to, but okay, next time it's her now. But,
It's Beethoven, I think.
it's, well, great, but we wanted all the different ones, that's too late now. I'd like to see it up on the red brick, so you see it from the street, and it's high, and then you put it in the front. But the one I really want is the one in the front, when you walk up.
So,
Still
for
remote.
clarification, the one in the front, the way it looks here with the correct full name of Maxine Frost Performing Arts Center will be located here in the front. And secondly, on the top where the bricks are, Is that correct?
I withdraw my vote. I just wanted the front. It's still Ramona. We don't need to put it all out there. I know we did it for art, and we didn't do it for Lou. We need to have some standardization. We did it for art because who he is. We're doing it for her too. But I think it's very impressive out front. That's one of our most impressive vistas of any interior, any of our schools, period.
Do we have any consistency, any standards? I know art has that big one, but do we have that on any of our other theaters, or does King doesn't have anything visible?
No, and we need to do
right?
that. We need to go with what we're going to use, but some will be a little bit different. But
They usually just have theater. Doesn't King just have theater?
Yes.
yeah, it doesn't have a name.
It doesn't have a name.
North just has theater,
Yeah.
because we've never
They've never named.
named it.
Okay, so maybe it doesn't matter. I was thinking we were trying to stay consistent with the Molly thing, but what do you think, Dr.
I agree with Trustee Hunt that just the front is more than sufficient.
I think it will look very impressive.
Yeah.
I think we just need to get a marketing campaign and start referring to it as the Frost. And then the Frost. And it'll be like, the hipster hangout.
Chill out at the Frost.
Yes. Yeah, there
You know what? And she would. Mrs. Alvin, best of all. I think she would be very honored and impressed with that view.
Chilling at the
So for recap,
I don't think that the Frost family will like that as much as seeing it from the street. I'm just telling you that.
Who doesn't want it in the street? You guys don't. Neither
No,
of
I
you.
think the Frost family would prefer to have it visible
Would you
from the
like to
street.
have it up there?
I have no problem with it having it up on the brick.
I like it on the brick. Are you really adamantly against it, Mr. Hunt?
No, adamant. I think it's. I like it out front. I just think it's impressive. I don't want, and as long as it's on not above the facade, but on it, I think it looks impressive.
But you could do it in both. You could do it on the brick.
Yeah,
and
well, I'll
whatever.
go back to my original. Do it on the brick and do it out front.
Okay.
But don't do it on the ADA.
Yeah, are you okay with that? All right, there you go.
okay, so for recap, we'll include the lettering where the bricks are, on the brick location, on the front of the theater.
Mm-hmm.
The
Not
the
Ramona
plaque
High.
will include Maxine Frost Performing Arts Center without Ramona High School. Is
Not
that correct?
Ramona. You're at Ramona.
Okay.
I'll make a motion based on the outline you just suggested.
And I'll second, but Mr. Souza, did you have anything to say?
No, I agree with what's been proposed, that's fine.
Okay. All right.
Doesn't want to wade into this one.
Dr. Fruit made a motion, I made a second. Yes, aye. All in favor, aye. Mr. Hunt, did you?
Aye. So I think.
Aye.
All right, Ms. Sally. All right, thank you. I think that's our last item. All right, do we have any agenda items for the future meetings? Anybody want anything done? All right, thank you all. Adjourned.
So I wasn't upset, huh?
No, he wasn't upset. No, he was laughing.